She never imagined that a simple mistake of opening the wrong door would change her life forever. At 26, she entered in tears, ready to resign after months of humiliation. But instead of her department head, she found the most powerful man in the company, the 37-year-old CEO, feared by everyone. Between a handkerchief offered with unexpected kindness and a gaze that revealed much more than authority, a connection was born that no one could have predicted, an encounter that would transform pain into destiny. The morning rain against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Sterling & Associates mirrored the storm brewing inside Emma's chest. She stood in the elevator, her reflection wavering in the polished steel doors, clutching a resignation letter that had taken her 3 sleepless nights to write. The delicate fabric of her cream-colored blouse trembled with each shaky breath she drew, and her auburn hair, usually perfectly arranged, had begun to escape its careful bun. 26 floors up, 26 floors of humiliation to leave behind. For 8 months, Emma had endured Sarah Mitchell's relentless cruelty. Every morning brought a fresh wave of public embarrassment. Coffee spilled accidentally on important documents, credit stolen for projects Emma had poured her heart into, and snide remarks about her small-town manners that left her cheeks burning with shame. But today's incident had been the final straw. "You're pathetic, Emma," Sarah had hissed during the morning meeting, her voice dripping with disdain as she tore apart Emma's carefully prepared presentation. "Maybe you should go back to whatever farm you crawled out of. Corporate America clearly isn't for you." The room had fallen silent, all eyes on Emma as tears threatened to spill. She had excused herself with whatever dignity remained, grabbed her resignation letter, and headed straight for the 27th floor where Department Head Monica Richardson had her office. Emma's hands shook as she stepped off the elevator. The executive floor felt different, quieter, more intimidating, with its marble floors and abstract artwork that probably cost more than her yearly salary. She had only been up here once before, during her initial interview 8 months ago, when she'd been so hopeful about starting her career in marketing. If this story is touching your heart, show your support. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. Every action helps us keep bringing you new stories full of emotion. The brass nameplate on the door read, "Executive Office," and Emma didn't bother to look closer. She was too consumed by the mixture of rage and heartbreak churning in her stomach, too focused on finally standing up for herself after months of silent suffering. She knocked once, heard a deep, "Come in," and pushed the door open. The words died in her throat. This wasn't Monica Richardson's office. Behind an imposing mahogany desk sat a man she had only seen in company newsletters and glimpsed occasionally in the lobby. Alexander Sterling, CEO of Sterling & Associates. At 37, he commanded attention without effort. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his jaw strong and defined, and his steel-grey eyes held an intensity that made her feel as though he could see straight through her soul. He was even more striking up close, wearing a charcoal suit that emphasized his broad shoulders and tall frame. There was something almost overwhelming about his presence, a quiet power that filled the room and made Emma suddenly aware of how small she felt. I'm so sorry," Emma stammered, her face flushing crimson. "I thought this was Monica Richardson's office. I'll just—" "Wait." His voice was deeper than she'd expected, with a warmth that surprised her. He had been reviewing documents, but now his full attention was on her. "Are you all right?" The simple question, asked with such genuine concern, broke something inside her. The tears she had been holding back since the meeting spilled over, and she stood frozen in his doorway, mortified by her complete lack of composure. Alexander had noticed her before. How could he not? Emma Hayes moved through the office like a gentle breeze, always polite to everyone from the custodial staff to the senior partners. He had observed her quiet kindness, the way she stayed late to help struggling colleagues, her soft smile that seemed to brighten whatever corner of the office she occupied. But he had never seen her like this, vulnerable, hurt, her usual radiance dimmed by obvious pain. Something protective stirred in his chest. "Please come in," he said, rising from his chair. His height, easily 6'3", should have been intimidating, but his movements were careful, non-threatening. He pulled a soft handkerchief from his jacket pocket, the kind of old-fashioned courtesy his grandmother had taught him, and offered it to her. "Sit down. Whatever's wrong, we can figure it out." Emma hesitated, clutching her resignation letter like a lifeline. "Mr. Sterling, I really shouldn't be here. I was looking for Monica Richardson and She's in the London office this week," Alexander said gently, gesturing to the leather chair across from his desk. "But I'm here, and you're clearly upset. Please." Against her better judgment, Emma found herself sinking into the chair. It was buttery soft, probably costing more than her monthly rent, and she felt absurdly out of place. She dabbed at her eyes with his handkerchief, catching a hint of his cologne, something woodsy and masculine that made her inexplicably calmer. "I'm Emma Hayes," she managed. "I work in marketing and I came to submit my resignation." Alexander leaned back in his chair, his grey eyes never leaving her face. Up close he could see the delicate freckles scattered across her nose, the way her green eyes sparkled even through tears, the natural beauty that needed no enhancement. There was something about her genuine vulnerability that touched a place in his heart he thought had been permanently locked away. "What happened?" he asked simply. And somehow, in that moment, Emma found herself telling him everything. About Sarah's daily cruelties, the stolen credit, the public humiliations, about how she had moved to the city with such hope and determination, only to have her confidence systematically destroyed by someone who seemed to take pleasure in her pain. Alexander listened without interruption, his expression growing darker with each detail. His hands, which had been casually resting on his desk, gradually curled into fists. He had built Sterling and Associates on principles of respect and excellence. The idea that someone was creating this kind of toxic environment under his nose made his blood boil. "You're not resigning," he said when she finished, his voice firm but gentle. "Not like this." Emma looked up at him through damp lashes, startled by the intensity in his voice. "Mr. Sterling, I appreciate your concern, but—" "Alexander," he corrected softly. "And I'm not just concerned, Emma. I'm appalled. This behavior is completely unacceptable, and it ends today." The way he said her name with such care and respect made her heart flutter in a way she didn't understand. Here was the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, taking time from what must be an incredibly busy schedule to listen to a junior marketing associate's problems. "I'll handle Sarah Mitchell personally," Alexander continued, his protective instincts in full force. "You shouldn't have to endure treatment like that from anyone, least of all a colleague." "But, Sir Alexander," Emma corrected herself, the name feeling intimate on her tongue. "Sarah is— she's well connected. Her uncle is Robert Mitchell, one of your biggest investors. I don't want to cause problems for the company." Alexander's respect for her grew exponentially. Even in her pain, she was thinking about others, about protecting the company that had failed to protect her. It was a selflessness he rarely encountered in his world of corporate politics and personal ambition. "Let me worry about Robert Mitchell," he said, his voice carrying the quiet confidence of a man accustomed to solving complex problems. "You worry about getting back to the work you love. Because you do love it, don't you? Marketing?" Emma nodded, surprised by his perceptiveness. "I do, I really do. I have so many ideas for campaigns, and I've been working on this project for sustainable packaging that could revolutionize our approach to—" She stopped abruptly, embarrassed by her sudden enthusiasm. But Alexander was smiling, the first genuine smile she'd ever seen from him. It transformed his entire face, making him seem less like an intimidating CEO and more like a man who understood passion and dedication. "Tell me about it," he said, leaning forward with obvious interest. For the next 20 minutes, Emma found herself explaining her ideas with growing confidence, her tears forgotten as she spoke about innovative marketing strategies and sustainable business practices. Alexander listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and offering insights that revealed a sharp mind and genuine care for both the company and its environmental impact. When she finally finished, cheeks flushed with excitement rather than embarrassment, Alexander was looking at her with something she couldn't quite identify. Admiration, interest, whatever it was, it made her pulse quicken. "Your ideas are brilliant," he said simply, "and I want to hear more of them. But first I want you to take the rest of the day off. Go home, relax, forget about Sarah Mitchell. When you come in tomorrow, I guarantee your work environment will be very different." As Emma stood to leave, clutching his handkerchief and her unsubmitted resignation letter, Alexander rose as well. He moved around the desk, and for a moment they were standing close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "Emma," he said softly, and the way he spoke her name made her look up into his eyes. "Thank you for coming to me, even by accident. I'm glad I could help." She nodded, not trusting her voice, and headed for the door. Just as she reached it, his voice stopped her. "And Emma, keep the handkerchief. I have a feeling we'll be seeing more of each other." As the door closed behind her, Alexander remained standing, staring at the space she had occupied. Something had shifted in that room, something that went far beyond resolving a workplace dispute. For the first time in 3 years, he found himself thinking about a woman not as a business associate or social obligation, but as someone who had stirred feelings he thought had died with his wife. And 26 floors below, Emma sat in her car in the parking garage, holding his handkerchief and wondering why her heart was racing like she'd just run a marathon. Whatever had just happened in that office, she knew with absolute certainty that her life had just changed forever. Emma didn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Alexander's intense grey gaze, heard the protective edge in his voice when he promised to handle Sarah Mitchell. She kept replaying their conversation, analysing every word, every expression, trying to understand why she felt so unsettled by his kindness. At 3 a.m., she found herself standing at her kitchen window, looking out at the city lights and absently touching the handkerchief he had given her. It still carried traces of his cologne, and she felt ridiculous for noticing such a detail. He was Alexander Sterling, successful, powerful, completely out of her league. He had simply been doing what any decent boss would do, protecting an employee from workplace harassment. Yet she couldn't shake the memory of how he had listened to her ideas about sustainable marketing with such genuine interest, or the way his smile had transformed his entire face when she'd gotten excited about her work. Meanwhile, 23 floors above the sleeping city, Alexander was having his own sleepless night. He stood in his home office, still wearing his dress shirt from that day, staring at the company organizational charts spread across his desk. But his mind wasn't on corporate structure. It was on Emma Hayes. He couldn't remember the last time someone had affected him so immediately and completely. Her vulnerability had awakened every protective instinct he possessed, but it was more than that. Her intelligence, her passion for her work, the way she had worried about the company even while being mistreated, everything about her intrigued him. "She's an employee," he reminded himself sternly, "and you're her CEO. This is complicated enough without you developing feelings for her." But even as he thought it, he was already planning his next moves. Sarah Mitchell's behavior was unacceptable and would be dealt with immediately. More importantly, he needed to understand exactly what kind of toxic environment had allowed such treatment to continue unchecked. The next morning, Emma arrived at work 30 minutes early, her stomach in knots. She had changed outfits 3 times, finally settling on a navy blazer, and matching skirt that made her feel more professional and confident. As she stepped off the elevator on her floor, she braced herself for another day of Sarah's psychological warfare. But Sarah's desk was empty. "Where's Sarah?" Emma asked Jenny, the receptionist, trying to keep her voice casual. Jenny's eyes were wide with excitement. "Haven't you heard? She was called up to HR first thing this morning. Been up there for over an hour with some big shots from legal. Maria from accounting said she saw Mr. Sterling himself going into the conference room." Emma's heart began to race. He had actually done it. He had actually followed through on his promise to handle the situation. 3 floors up, Alexander was indeed in the HR conference room, but his attention was divided between the Sarah Mitchell situation and thoughts of the woman he was protecting. Every few minutes, he found himself glancing toward the door, wondering if Emma had arrived yet, how she was feeling, whether she was still planning to resign. "Sir," Patricia from HR was speaking, "what would you like us to do about Ms. Mitchell's employment status?" Alexander forced himself to focus. "The documentation you've gathered is extensive. 8 months of complaints that were never properly addressed, witnesses to her inappropriate behavior, and multiple instances of taking credit for other people's work. That's grounds for immediate termination." "But, sir," legal counsel David Hartwell interjected nervously, "her uncle Robert Mitchell represents 15% of our investment capital. If we terminate her, he might what?" Alexander's voice carried a dangerous edge. Pull his investment because we refuse to tolerate workplace harassment. If that's the kind of man Robert Mitchell is, then we'll find better investors." The room fell silent. Everyone knew Alexander Sterling was decisive, but his obvious anger over this particular situation was noteworthy. "However," Alexander continued, his tone becoming more measured, "I want this handled strategically. Schedule a meeting with Robert Mitchell for this afternoon. I'll explain the situation personally and give him the opportunity to address his niece's behavior before we take formal action." As the meeting concluded, Alexander made a decision that surprised even himself. Instead of returning to his office, he took the elevator down to the marketing department. Emma was at her desk trying to concentrate on a client presentation when she sensed someone approaching. She looked up to find Alexander Sterling standing beside her cubicle, and her heart immediately began to race. He looked different on her floor, still imposing and professional, but somehow more approachable. His charcoal suit was perfectly tailored, emphasizing his athletic build, and when he smiled at her, she felt that same flutter in her stomach from yesterday. "Good morning, Emma. How are you feeling today?" Several of her colleagues had turned to stare, and Emma was acutely aware of the attention they were attracting. I'm fine, thank you, Mr. Sterling." "Alexander," he corrected gently, just as he had yesterday. "I wanted to let you know that the situation with Ms. Mitchell is being addressed. You won't have any further problems from her." Emma's relief was visible. "Thank you. I really appreciate everything you've done." Alexander found himself reluctant to leave. There was something about seeing her in her natural work environment that fascinated him. Her desk was meticulously organized, with small personal touches that revealed her personality, a small succulent plant, a photo of what looked like her family, and several marketing journals with sticky notes protruding from their pages. "I also wanted to follow up on those sustainability ideas you mentioned yesterday," he said, genuinely interested. "Would you be available to discuss them in more detail, perhaps over lunch today?" The question hung in the air between them, and Emma felt every pair of eyes in the department watching their interaction. Lunch with the CEO was unprecedented, and she could practically hear the rumor mill starting to churn. That would be wonderful," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "But are you sure? I mean, I'm just a junior associate and you must be incredibly busy." "Emma." The way he said her name with such quiet intensity made her stop mid-sentence. "Your ideas impressed me yesterday. I'd like to hear more of them." "That's good business, nothing more." But even as he said it, both of them knew it wasn't entirely true. There was something else happening between them, something neither was ready to acknowledge. "All right," she agreed softly. "What time? 12:30? I'll have my assistant make a reservation somewhere quiet where we can talk without interruption." After he left, Emma sat staring at her computer screen without seeing it. Around her, she could hear the whispered conversations beginning. "Did you see the way he looked at her? Lunch with the CEO, what's that about? I heard he personally handled the Sarah situation. He must really favor her." Emma's cheeks burned with embarrassment. She had worked so hard to prove herself through merit alone, and now everyone would assume she was receiving special treatment for other reasons. But despite her embarrassment, she couldn't deny the excitement thrumming through her veins. Alexander Sterling, brilliant, successful, incredibly attractive, wanted to discuss her ideas. He saw value in her work, in her mind. When was the last time anyone had made her feel so intellectually respected? Back in his office, Alexander was having similar thoughts. He told himself the lunch was purely professional, that he was simply nurturing promising talent within his company. But he couldn't explain why he had specifically requested a table at Le Bernardin, one of the city's most intimate restaurants, or why he found himself looking forward to the meal with an anticipation that had nothing to do with business strategy. His assistant Margaret knocked and entered with his morning coffee. "Sir, the reservation is confirmed for 12:30. Should I prepare any materials for your lunch meeting with Ms. Hayes?" "No, thank you, Margaret. This is an informal discussion about some innovative marketing concepts she's developed." Margaret, who had worked for Alexander for over a decade, noticed the slight softening in his expression when he mentioned Emma's name. In all her years of service, she had never seen him take such personal interest in a junior employee's ideas. As noon approached, both Emma and Alexander found themselves distracted by thoughts of their upcoming lunch. Neither was willing to admit that their interest in each other went beyond professional curiosity. but the tension between them was becoming impossible to ignore. The investigation into Sarah Mitchell was proceeding exactly as Alexander had planned, but his mind kept drifting to the woman he was protecting. Emma Hayes had disrupted his carefully controlled world in the space of a single tearful encounter, and he was beginning to realize that his life might never be the same. In her cubicle, Emma tried to focus on her presentation, but her thoughts kept returning to Alexander's intense grey eyes and the way he had said her name. She had always been practical about relationships, understanding her place in the world and not reaching beyond her station. But something about Alexander Sterling made her want to reach higher than she ever had before, even if it terrified her to do so. At exactly 12:25, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Ready when you are. Alexander." The fact that he had personally texted her, that he had her personal number in his phone, made her pulse quicken in a way that had nothing to do with professional advancement. As she gathered her purse and notes, Emma had no idea that this lunch would set in motion a series of events that would challenge everything both she and Alexander thought they knew about love, loyalty, and the courage it takes to risk your heart again. La Bernardin was everything Emma had imagined an expensive restaurant would be. Elegant, hushed, with crystal that caught the light and silverware that probably cost more than her monthly grocery budget. She felt acutely out of place as the maître d' led her to a corner table where Alexander was already waiting. He stood as she approached, a gesture of old-fashioned courtesy that made her heart flutter. Today, he had removed his suit jacket, and she could see the way his navy shirt emphasized the breadth of his shoulders and the lean strength of his frame. When he smiled at her, she nearly stumbled. "You look beautiful," he said simply, and the compliment, delivered without fanfare or calculation, made her cheeks warm. Emma had chosen an emerald green dress that brought out her eyes, something professional, yet feminine. She had told herself the extra care with her appearance was about making a good impression for business purposes, but the way Alexander's gaze lingered appreciatively on her made her glad she had chosen the dress that made her feel most confident. "Thank you," she managed, settling into the chair he held for her. "This place is incredible. I thought we might need somewhere quiet to talk, without the entire office speculating about our conversation," he said, but there was something in his tone that suggested privacy for more personal reasons as well. As they perused the menu, Emma felt herself relaxing despite the elegant surroundings. Alexander had a way of making conversation feel natural, asking about her background, her journey to the city, her dreams for her career. She found herself sharing stories about growing up in a small farming community in upstate New York, about her parents who had worked multiple jobs to send her to college. "They must be very proud of you," Alexander said, and there was genuine warmth in his voice. "They are," Emma smiled, "though I think they worry about me being in the big city all alone. My mother still sends me care packages with homemade cookies and reminds me to lock my doors." Alexander found himself charmed by the image of Emma receiving care packages from her mother. In his world of corporate dinners and strategic relationships, such simple, genuine affection was rare. "Family is important," he said quietly. "You're lucky to have that support." Something in his tone made Emma look at him more closely. "What about your family?" For a moment, Alexander's expression became guarded. "My parents died when I was 25. Car accident. I have a sister in California, but we don't see each other often. Work keeps me busy." Emma sensed there was more to the story, but she didn't press. Instead, she reached across the table and briefly touched his hand. "I'm sorry. That must have been devastating." The simple gesture of comfort, offered without hesitation or calculation, affected Alexander more than he cared to admit. Her hand was small and warm against his, and when she withdrew it, he immediately missed the contact. "Tell me about these sustainability ideas," he said, steering the conversation to safer ground. Emma's enthusiasm was infectious as she outlined her vision for eco-friendly packaging, carbon-neutral shipping options, and marketing campaigns that would position Sterling and Associates as an industry leader in environmental responsibility. Alexander found himself genuinely impressed by the depth of her research and the innovative nature of her proposals. "You've thought of everything," he said. "Implementation timeline, cost analysis, projected consumer response. This isn't just an idea, it's a complete strategy. I've been working on it for months, Emma admitted. I kept hoping for an opportunity to present it to Monica Richardson, but she's always so busy, and Sarah made it clear that junior associates shouldn't bother the department heads with unrealistic fantasies. Alexander's jaw tightened at the mention of Sarah's continued undermining. Sarah Mitchell's opinion is no longer relevant to your career development, he said firmly. I want you to prepare a formal presentation of these concepts for the executive committee next week. Emma nearly dropped her fork. The executive committee? But I'm not qualified to— You're the most qualified person I know to present your own ideas, Alexander interrupted. Emma, you have vision, passion, and the research to back up your proposals. That's exactly what we need. As they talked, Alexander found himself studying the animated expressions that crossed Emma's face when she discussed her work. The way she lit up when talking about environmental impact, the slight crease between her eyebrows when she concentrated, the graceful gestures of her hands as she explained complex concepts, everything about her fascinated him. Emma, meanwhile, was discovering that Alexander Sterling was nothing like the cold, intimidating CEO his reputation suggested. He listened intently to her ideas, asked thoughtful questions that challenged her to think deeper, and offered insights that revealed both his business acumen and his genuine care for making a positive impact. I have a confession, Alexander said, as they shared a chocolate souffle for dessert. Yesterday wasn't the first time I noticed you. Emma's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. It wasn't? I've seen you around the office for months. You're the one who always holds the elevator for people, who stays late to help colleagues with their projects. You bought flowers for Maria in accounting when her mother was sick, and you organized that surprise birthday party for James in graphic design. Emma stared at him in amazement. You noticed all of that. I notice a lot of things, Alexander said quietly. But you stood out. Your kindness, your work ethic, the way you treat everyone with respect, regardless of their position. That's rare in corporate America. The intensity in his voice made Emma's breath catch. I believe in treating people the way I'd want to be treated. Exactly. Alexander leaned forward slightly, his grey eyes holding hers. Do you know how refreshing that is in my world? Most people want something from me. Investments, partnerships, introductions. But you, even yesterday, when you were in pain and needed help, you were worried about causing problems for the company. Emma felt heat rise in her cheeks under his intense gaze. I don't know what to say to that. You don't need to say anything. Just be yourself. That's more than enough. The moment stretched between them, charged with an awareness that went far beyond professional admiration. Emma could feel her heart racing, and from the way Alexander was looking at her, she suspected he was experiencing the same pull she felt. We should probably head back, she said finally, though she didn't want this lunch to end. Probably, Alexander agreed, but neither of them moved to leave. Finally, he signaled for the check, and Emma felt a pang of disappointment that their time together was ending. As they walked toward the restaurant's exit, Alexander's hand briefly touched the small of her back to guide her around another table, and Emma felt electricity shoot through her entire body from that simple contact. Outside the restaurant, they stood for a moment in the afternoon sunlight, both reluctant to return to the boundaries of their professional relationship. Emma, Alexander said, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it, thank you for lunch, for sharing your ideas, your passion, your perspective. It's been enlightening. Thank you for listening, she replied, and for believing in my ideas. I can't remember the last time someone took my work so seriously. They stood close enough that Emma could smell his cologne again, that same woodsy scent that had comforted her yesterday. She found herself studying his face, the strong line of his jaw, the way his eyes crinkled slightly at the corners when he smiled, the perfectly shaped mouth that she suddenly wondered what it would feel like against hers. The inappropriate thought made her step back quickly, but not before Alexander noticed the direction of her gaze. His own eyes darkened with an awareness that made the air between them feel charged. I should get back to work, Emma said, her voice slightly breathless. Of course, Alexander agreed, though his reluctance was evident. I'll have Margaret schedule a meeting room for your presentation next week. And Emma, yes? If anyone gives you any trouble about today, about lunch or the presentation opportunity or anything else, you come directly to me. Understood, The protective edge in his voice made Emma's pulse quicken. Understood. As they walked back toward the Sterling and Associates building, both lost in their own thoughts, neither noticed the photographer across the street capturing their intimate conversation outside the restaurant, or the way Alexander's body language spoke of a man completely captivated by his companion. Back in the office, Emma tried to focus on her work, but her mind kept drifting to Alexander's words, his intense attention, the way he had looked at her when he said she was more than enough just being herself. She had never felt so seen, so valued, so desired. Across town in his corner office, Alexander was having similar difficulty concentrating. He kept remembering the way Emma's eyes had sparkled when she talked about her environmental initiatives, the soft sound of her laughter, the brief moment when she had touched his hand in comfort. For the first time in 3 years, he found himself thinking about a woman not as a memory from his past, but as a possibility for his future. The realization both thrilled and terrified him. Neither of them knew that their lunch had been observed and photographed, or that forces were already aligning to complicate the growing connection between them. All they knew was that something had fundamentally shifted during their 2 hours together, something that would be impossible to ignore going forward. As Emma gathered her things to leave the office that evening, she found a small package on her desk with a note in elegant handwriting. For the presentation next week. You're going to be brilliant. Inside was a leather portfolio, expensive and beautifully crafted, with her initials embossed in gold. It was a thoughtful, professional gift, but the personal note and the care he had taken to have her initials added made it feel like something more intimate. Emma held the portfolio against her chest and smiled, unaware that accepting this gift was the first step down a path that would challenge everything she thought she knew about love, ambition, and the courage it takes to reach for something extraordinary. The leather portfolio sat on Emma's kitchen counter like a beautiful question mark, its gold-embossed initials catching the morning light streaming through her apartment windows. She had spent the entire weekend preparing for her executive committee presentation, but her mind kept drifting to the man who had made it possible. Alexander Sterling was occupying far too much of her thoughts. She caught herself remembering the way his eyes had intensified when she talked about her environmental initiatives, the protective edge in his voice when he promised to handle anyone who gave her trouble, the electricity that had shot through her when his hand touched her back. He's your CEO, she reminded herself sternly as she got ready for work. This is professional mentorship, nothing more. But even as she thought it, she found herself choosing her outfit with extra care, a sophisticated burgundy dress that made her feel confident and professional, yet undeniably feminine. Meanwhile, across the city in his penthouse apartment, Alexander was having his own internal battle. He stood at his floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city skyline while nursing his second cup of coffee, trying to convince himself that his interest in Emma Hayes was purely professional. The attempt was futile. He had thought about her all weekend, her infectious enthusiasm, her genuine kindness, the way she had touched his hand in comfort when he mentioned his parents' death. No one had offered him such simple, unconditional compassion in years. His phone buzzed with a text from his sister Rebecca in California. Saw the photo in Business Insider. She's beautiful, Alex. It's about time you started living again. Alexander frowned and pulled up the magazine's website on his tablet. There, in the society section, was a photograph of him and Emma outside Le Bernardin. The caption read, "Sterling and Associates CEO Alexander Sterling enjoys an intimate lunch with mysterious companion. New romance for the city's most eligible bachelor?" His jaw clenched as he studied the image. The photographer had captured them in profile, standing close together, his body language unmistakably protective as he looked down at her. Emma's face was turned up toward his, and even in the grainy photograph the connection between them was obvious. This was exactly the kind of attention he had hoped to avoid. At Sterling and Associates, Emma was blissfully unaware of the photograph as she prepared for her presentation. She had arrived early to review her materials one final time, and the marketing department was still mostly empty. The new leather portfolio lay open on her desk, filled with her carefully prepared slides and supporting documents. Well, look who's gotten cozy with the boss. Emma looked up to find David Morrison from the sales department, leaning against her cubicle wall, a smirk on his face as he held up his phone displaying the Business Insider article. "I don't know what you mean." Emma said coolly, though her stomach dropped as she saw the photograph. Come on, Emma. Intimate lunch at La Bernardin? Expensive gifts? David gestured to the leather portfolio. Everyone knows what this is about. The question is, how far are you willing to go for that promotion? Emma's cheeks burned with humiliation and anger. My relationship with Mr. Sterling is completely professional. We discussed marketing strategies, nothing more. Sure you did, David laughed. And I'm sure those marketing strategies are why you're suddenly presenting to the executive committee after 8 months as a junior associate. Other colleagues were beginning to arrive and overhear the conversation. Emma could see the speculative looks, the whispered conversations starting. Her worst fears were coming true. No one would believe she had earned this opportunity through merit. I earned this presentation through my work, she said firmly, standing to face David directly. My ideas are solid, my research is thorough, and my proposals could save this company millions while positioning us as industry leaders in sustainability. Of course they could, David said patronizingly. I'm sure Sterling was very impressed by your presentation skills. Emma's hands clenched into fists, but before she could respond, a familiar deep voice cut through the tension. Is there a problem here? Alexander had appeared beside them with the silent authority that came so naturally to him. He was immaculately dressed in a dark grey suit that emphasized his powerful frame, and his steel grey eyes held a dangerous edge as they fixed on David Morrison. David's smirk disappeared instantly. No, sir, just congratulating Emma on her upcoming presentation. I see. Alexander's voice was deceptively calm, but Emma could sense the anger beneath the surface. Morrison, isn't it? From sales? Yes, sir. How are your quarterly numbers looking, Morrison? David shifted uncomfortably. They're improving, sir. Improving from what baseline? Because according to the reports I reviewed this morning, you're running 20% behind target. Perhaps you should focus on your own performance before speculating about your colleagues' achievements. The dismissal was clear and devastating. David mumbled something about getting back to work and quickly retreated, leaving Emma alone with Alexander and the curious stares of their colleagues. Are you all right? Alexander asked quietly, his tone completely different when addressing her. Emma nodded, though she felt anything but all right. The humiliation of having her professional integrity questioned, combined with the obvious interest Alexander was showing in her welfare, only reinforced the gossip that was already spreading through the office. The presentation is in an hour, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. I should finish preparing. Alexander studied her face, noting the flush in her cheeks and the tight line of her shoulders. He wanted nothing more than to reassure her, to tell her that Morrison was an idiot, and that her ideas deserved recognition regardless of their personal connection. But he was acutely aware of the audience they had, and any further attention he showed her would only fuel more speculation. I look forward to hearing your proposals, he said formally, though his eyes conveyed warmth and encouragement that made her pulse quicken. After he left, Emma sank into her chair, her hands shaking slightly. The photograph had changed everything. What had felt like a natural professional development now looked calculated and inappropriate. She glanced around the marketing department and saw clusters of colleagues whispering while looking in her direction. An hour later, Emma stood outside the executive boardroom, clutching her leather portfolio and trying to calm her racing heart. Through the glass doors, she could see the most powerful people in the company taking their seats around the polished conference table. Alexander sat at the head, reviewing documents, looking every inch the commanding CEO she had first encountered in his office. Margaret, his assistant, appeared beside her. They're ready for you, dear, and Emma, don't let them intimidate you. Your ideas are exactly what this company needs. Emma entered the boardroom on unsteady legs, acutely aware that every eye was on her. Besides Alexander, there were 7 other executives present, including CFO Jonathan Hayes, no relation despite the shared surname, Head of Operations Linda Chen, and Legal Counsel David Hartwell. Gentlemen, Linda, Alexander said, I'd like you to meet Emma Hayes from our marketing department. She's developed some innovative sustainability initiatives that could revolutionize our approach to environmental responsibility while improving our bottom line. As Emma moved to the front of the room to begin her presentation, she caught Alexander's eye briefly. The confidence and pride she saw there steadied her nerves, and reminded her why she was here, not because of any personal relationship, but because her ideas had merit. For the next 30 minutes, Emma delivered the presentation of her life. She outlined her vision for eco-friendly packaging, detailed the cost-benefit analysis of sustainable shipping options, and presented marketing campaigns that would position Sterling and Associates as an industry pioneer in environmental consciousness. The executives listened intently, asking sharp questions that Emma answered with confidence and thoroughness. She could see approval in their faces, genuine interest in her proposals, and growing excitement about the possibilities she was presenting. The initial investment would be substantial, CFO Hayes noted, but the long-term savings are impressive, and the marketing advantages could be significant. Consumer demand for environmentally responsible companies is at an all-time high, Emma agreed. We have an opportunity to capture that market while doing genuine good for the environment. When she finished, the room was quiet for a moment before Linda Chen spoke up. This is the most comprehensive sustainability proposal I've seen from any company. The research is thorough, the projections are realistic, and the potential impact is substantial. Alexander felt pride surge through him as he watched Emma field questions from some of the sharpest minds in corporate America. She was brilliant, poised, and utterly professional. Whatever personal feelings he might be developing for her, there was no question that she had earned this opportunity through her own talent and hard work. "Thank you, Miss Hayes," Alexander said formally. "We'll review your proposals and be in touch soon with our decision." As the executives filed out, Alexander lingered, ostensibly organizing his papers, but really waiting for a moment alone with Emma. "That was exceptional," he said quietly once they were alone. "You should be very proud of yourself." Emma's professional composure cracked slightly, and he could see the relief and excitement in her eyes. "Do you really think they'll approve it?" "I think you just gave them the roadmap for the company's next phase of growth," Alexander said honestly. "But Emma..." "Yes?" He moved closer, close enough that she could catch that woodsy scent of his cologne, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "After today, after that photograph in Business Insider, things are going to be more complicated for both of us." Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that people are watching us now, looking for signs of impropriety. We need to be careful." "Careful about what?" Emma asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Alexander's eyes dropped to her lips for just a moment before returning to her eyes. "About this. Whatever this is between us." The admission hung in the air between them, electric and dangerous. Emma felt her breath catch as she realized he was acknowledging what they had both been trying to deny, that their connection went far beyond professional mentorship. "Alexander," she whispered. "I know," he said softly. "I know this complicates everything. Your career, my position, the company. So what do we do?" Alexander looked down at her, this brilliant, beautiful woman who had disrupted his carefully controlled world, and felt the last of his rational defenses crumbling. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I know I can't stop thinking about you. I know that watching you present today, seeing your passion and intelligence, it made me want to give you the world." Emma's eyes filled with tears, not of sadness but of overwhelming emotion. "This is dangerous," she whispered. "I know," Alexander agreed, reaching up to gently touch her cheek. "But Emma, I think it might be worth the risk." As they stood in the empty boardroom, both of them knew they had crossed a line from which there was no return. The photograph in Business Insider was just the beginning. The real danger was what they were beginning to feel for each other, and the impossible choices that lay ahead. 2 days after her presentation, Emma received the call that would change everything. Margaret's voice was warm but professional when she delivered the news. The executive committee had unanimously approved Emma's sustainability initiative, and they wanted to implement it company-wide, starting with a pilot program in the next quarter. Emma hung up the phone and sat in stunned silence for a moment before the reality hit her. They had said yes. Her ideas, her months of research and planning, her vision for the company's environmental future, it was all going to become reality. The celebration was short-lived. As word spread through the office, she could hear the whispered conversations, see the pointed looks from colleagues who attributed her success to her rumored relationship with Alexander rather than her professional merit. "Lucky girl," she heard Sandra from accounting say to someone near the coffee machine. Must be nice to have the boss wrapped around your finger. Emma's jaw clenched, but she forced herself to focus on her computer screen. She had worked too hard and come too far to let office gossip diminish her achievement. That evening, as Emma was packing up to leave, she found a small wrapped package on her desk with a note in Alexander's distinctive handwriting. Congratulations on your success. You earned every bit of it. Inside was a delicate silver necklace with a small pendant shaped like a leaf, a subtle nod to her environmental work that was both thoughtful and elegant. The personal nature of the gift made her heart race, even as she knew she shouldn't accept it. She was still holding the necklace when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Meet me in the parking garage. Level B3, northwest corner. We need to talk. 20 minutes later, Emma found herself in the dimly lit parking garage, her heels echoing against the concrete as she walked toward the northwest corner. Alexander's sleek black sedan was parked in the shadows, and he was leaning against it, having shed his suit jacket and loosened his tie. Even in the harsh fluorescent lighting, he was devastatingly attractive. The rolled sleeves of his white shirt revealed strong forearms, and his dark hair looked as though he had been running his fingers through it. When he saw her approaching, he straightened, and she could see the tension in his shoulders. I can't accept this, Emma said immediately, holding out the necklace. It's beautiful, but people are already talking, and if they see me wearing something like this... Keep it, Alexander said quietly. Please, it's just a small token to commemorate your achievement, nothing more. But they both knew it was more than that. The carefully chosen pendant, the personal inscription, the way he had waited until after hours to give it to her. Everything about the gesture spoke of intimate attention that went far beyond professional recognition. Alexander, we need to talk about what's happening between us, Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper in the empty garage. He moved closer, close enough that she could see the conflict in his grey eyes. I know. Emma, I've been trying to stay professional, to maintain appropriate boundaries, but I think about you constantly. During meetings, I find myself wondering what you're working on. When I'm reviewing reports, I look for excuses to visit your department. Yesterday, when I saw Morrison giving you trouble, I wanted to do more than just embarrass him professionally. Emma's breath caught at the intensity in his voice. What did you want to do? Alexander's hands clenched at his sides. I wanted to make it clear to every person in that office that you're under my protection, that anyone who disrespects you answers to me personally. The possessive edge in his voice should have alarmed her, but instead it sent heat spiraling through her body. That would only make the gossip worse. I know, Alexander said, frustration clear in his voice. I know that any attention I show you reflects on your professional reputation. I know that people are already questioning whether you earned your opportunities through merit or other means. Emma flinched at the confirmation of her worst fears. So, what do we do? Alexander was quiet for a long moment, studying her face in the dim light. Finally, he spoke, his voice heavy with reluctant honesty. There's something I need to tell you. Something about why I've been trying so hard to keep my distance. Emma's stomach tightened at his serious tone. What is it? I was married before, Alexander said quietly. Her name was Catherine. We were together for 8 years, married for 5. Emma felt her heart sink, though she tried not to show it. Of course, someone like Alexander had been married. He was 37, successful, attractive. It would have been naive to think she was the first woman to capture his attention. What happened? She asked gently. Alexander's jaw tightened, and she could see the pain that crossed his features. 3 years ago, she was in a car accident. A drunk driver ran a red light and hit her car head-on. She was in the hospital for 2 weeks before... He stopped, unable to finish the sentence, but Emma understood. Her heart ached for him, for the loss he had endured. I'm so sorry, she whispered, instinctively reaching out to touch his arm in comfort. The simple gesture of compassion nearly broke something inside Alexander. On the last day when we knew she wasn't going to recover, she made me promise something. Emma waited, though she dreaded what was coming. She made me promise that I wouldn't spend my life grieving for her, that I would move on, find someone else, be happy again. Alexander's voice was rough with emotion. And I promised her I would. But then, the next day, after she died, I couldn't imagine ever wanting anyone else, So I made another promise to myself this time, that I wouldn't dishonor her memory by falling in love again. Emma felt tears sting her eyes as she understood the impossible position he was in. Alexander, for 3 years that promise was easy to keep, he continued. I threw myself into work, focused on building the company, never let anyone get close enough to matter. Until you walked into my office 2 weeks ago crying over workplace harassment, and everything changed. Emma's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. Changed how? Alexander moved even closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. You made me feel alive again, Emma. For the first time in 3 years, I found myself looking forward to something other than work. When I see you, when I hear you laugh, when you get that excited expression on your face, when you're talking about your ideas, it's like waking up from a 3-year coma. But you feel like you're betraying her memory, Emma said softly, understanding the conflict that was tearing him apart. Yes, Alexander admitted. And more than that, I'm terrified. What if I let myself care about you and something happens? What if I lose you too? Emma felt her own eyes fill with tears at the vulnerability in his voice. This powerful, controlled man was sharing his deepest fears with her, trusting her with his pain. Alexander, look at me, she said softly. When he met her eyes, she continued, Your wife loved you enough to want you to be happy again. She wouldn't want you to spend the rest of your life alone because you're afraid of loss. That's not living, that's just existing. I know that intellectually, Alexander said. But Emma, what I'm feeling for you, it's not just attraction or companionship. It's something deeper, something that could completely change my life, and yours. Emma's breath caught at the implication. What are you saying? I'm saying that I think I'm falling in love with you, Alexander said quietly, and that terrifies me more than any business deal or corporate crisis ever has. The admission hung between them in the quiet garage, electric and life-changing. Emma felt her world tilt on its axis as she processed his words. I think I'm falling in love with you too, she whispered, the confession feeling both terrifying and liberating. Alexander's eyes darkened with emotion, and for a moment she thought he might kiss her, but instead he stepped back, running a hand through his hair. This is impossible, Emma. You work for me. The power dynamic, the gossip, the potential damage to your reputation. I don't care about any of that, Emma said, though even as she said it, she knew it wasn't entirely true. She did care about her reputation, about being taken seriously as a professional. You should care, Alexander said firmly. You've worked too hard to have your achievements overshadowed by speculation about our relationship. So what are you suggesting? That we pretend these feelings don't exist? Alexander looked at her with such longing that it took her breath away. I don't know if I can do that anymore. They stood in the shadows of the parking garage, both knowing they had reached a crossroads. Whatever they decided in this moment would determine not just their relationship, but their futures. I need time to think, Emma said finally, about what this means, about what we're risking. Alexander nodded, though she could see the disappointment in his eyes. Of course. Take all the time you need. As Emma turned to leave, Alexander called her name softly. When she looked back, he said, For what it's worth, Emma, I think Catherine would have liked you. She always said I needed someone who could challenge me, who could see past the CEO facade to the man underneath. Emma smiled through her tears. I'd like to think she would have approved. As she walked to her car, Emma clutched the silver necklace in her hand, knowing that whatever she decided, there was no going back. Alexander Sterling had just confessed to falling in love with her, and she had admitted the same. The only question now was whether they had the courage to fight for something that could either destroy them both or give them the kind of love that most people only dreamed of finding. Emma spent the weekend in her small apartment, pacing between her kitchen and living room like a caged animal. Alexander's confession echoed in her mind on an endless loop. I think I'm falling in love with you. The silver necklace sat on her coffee table, catching the afternoon sunlight that streamed through her windows, a beautiful reminder of the impossible situation she found herself in. She had called her best friend Jessica 3 times, started the conversation, then hung up without explaining what was wrong. How could she possibly tell anyone that she was falling in love with her CEO, that he felt the same way, that they were both terrified of what that meant? On Sunday evening, her mother called from upstate, her voice warm and familiar. "You sound distracted, sweetheart. Is everything all right at work?" Emma almost laughed at the irony. "Work is complicated, Mom." "Complicated how? Are you still having trouble with that girl who was giving you problems?" "No, that's been resolved." Emma twisted the phone cord around her finger, debating how much to share. "Actually, I got a promotion of sorts. The executive committee approved my sustainability project." "Emma, that's wonderful. Your father and I are so proud of you." Her mother's excitement was infectious, and for a moment, Emma allowed herself to feel the pure joy of her professional achievement. "You've worked so hard for this opportunity." "I have," Emma agreed, but her voice lacked conviction. "But..." Emma's mother had always been perceptive, able to read her daughter's moods even over the phone. "But some people think I didn't earn it on my own merit." "What do you mean?" Emma took a deep breath. "There have been some rumors about me and someone in management. People think I got the promotion because of personal relationships rather than professional ability." There was a long pause before her mother spoke, her voice carefully controlled. "Emma, please tell me you haven't gotten involved with your boss." The concern in her mother's voice made Emma's chest tight. "It's not what you think, Mom." "Sweetheart, I raised you to be smarter than this. Men in positions of power, they might seem charming and interested, but they rarely have honorable intentions toward women in lower positions." "This is different," Emma protested, but even as she said it, she could hear how naive she sounded. "Is it? Emma, I've seen this story before. When I was your age, I worked as a secretary for a law firm. One of the partners took an interest in me, brought me flowers, took me to expensive lunches, made me feel special and important. I thought it was real, that he cared about me." Emma had never heard this story before. "What happened?" "I found out he was married, for one thing. But more than that, I realized he had done the same thing with other young women in the office. It was a pattern, Emma. Powerful men often enjoy the feeling of having young, attractive employees competing for their attention." "Mom, this isn't like that. He's not married and he's not playing games. He's actually trying to protect my reputation by keeping his distance." "Oh, honey." Her mother's voice was full of sympathy. "That's exactly what they all say. Listen to me. Whatever you think you feel for this man, whatever you think he feels for you, it will end badly. Men like that don't marry women like us. They marry other executives, society women, people from their own world." After they hung up, Emma sat in her darkened living room, her mother's words echoing in her mind. Was she being naive? Was Alexander just another powerful man amusing himself with a younger employee? The rational part of her mind said no. She had seen his vulnerability, his genuine conflict about his feelings. But doubt had been planted, and it grew throughout the night. Meanwhile, across the city, Alexander was having his own crisis of conscience. He sat in his home office, supposedly reviewing quarterly reports, but his mind kept drifting to Emma. The way she had looked at him in the parking garage, the tremble in her voice when she admitted she was falling in love with him too, the tears in her eyes when he told her about Catherine. His phone rang, interrupting his brooding. Robert Mitchell's name appeared on the screen. "Robert," Alexander answered, his voice professionally cordial despite his personal dislike for the man. "Alexander, we need to talk. I understand you terminated my niece's employment without consulting me first." Alexander's jaw tightened. He had been expecting this call since Sarah's dismissal the previous Friday. Sarah was terminated for documented workplace harassment and unprofessional conduct. The decision was made based on HR recommendations and witness statements. Witness statements from that little marketing girl she had some personality conflicts with? Come on, Alexander. We both know how these things work. Sarah can be intense, but she's young and eager. Surely we can find a way to resolve this without destroying her career. The behavior was unacceptable, Alexander said firmly. I won't tolerate employees creating hostile work environments, regardless of their connections. I see. Robert's voice took on a dangerous edge. And I suppose this has nothing to do with your personal interest in the young woman making the accusations. Alexander felt his blood run cold. I beg your pardon. There's a rather interesting photograph making the rounds, Alexander. You and a certain Emma Hayes looking very cozy outside Le Bernardin. My contacts tell me she's also received some rather impressive career opportunities lately. Funny how these things coincide, isn't it? The threat was barely veiled, and Alexander felt his protective instincts surge. Ms. Hayes earned her opportunities through exceptional work and innovative ideas. Any suggestion otherwise is insulting to both of us. Of course, I'm sure her ideas are very inspiring. But Alexander, you need to think carefully about the optics here. Sterling and Associates has built its reputation on professionalism and integrity. Scandals involving executives and subordinates can be very damaging to stock prices and investor confidence. Are you threatening me, Robert? I'm advising you, as a friend and significant investor. These situations rarely end well for anyone involved. Perhaps it would be better for everyone if Ms. Hayes found opportunities elsewhere. I hear Mitchell Industries is looking for someone with sustainability experience. I'd be happy to arrange an introduction. Alexander gripped the phone tighter, rage building in his chest. Emma Hayes is a valuable employee, and she's not going anywhere. We'll see, Robert said pleasantly. Have a good evening, Alexander. After hanging up, Alexander sat in furious silence. Robert Mitchell's message had been clear. Back off from Emma or face professional consequences. The idea of being manipulated by that arrogant, corrupt man made Alexander's blood boil, but he couldn't ignore the threat to Emma's reputation and career. Monday morning brought a new wave of challenges. Emma arrived at work to find her desk covered with congratulatory notes from colleagues about her sustainability project approval, but she could also feel the weight of speculative stares and whispered conversations. At 10 a.m., Alexander's assistant Margaret called. "Miss Hayes, Mr. Sterling would like to see you in his office at your earliest convenience." Emma's heart raced as she rode the elevator to the executive floor. She hadn't seen Alexander since their conversation in the parking garage, and she wasn't sure what to expect. She found him standing by his windows, looking out at the city skyline. He was perfectly dressed as always, but she could see tension in the set of his shoulders. When he turned to greet her, his expression was carefully neutral. "Thank you for coming up," he said formally. "Please, have a seat." Emma settled into the chair across from his desk, noting the physical distance he was maintaining between them. "You wanted to see me?" "I received some concerning information over the weekend," Alexander began, his voice professional but strained. "It seems our interaction at La Bernardin has attracted more attention than we realized." Emma's stomach dropped. What kind of attention? The kind that could damage both of our reputations and careers if we're not careful. Alexander sat behind his desk, the mahogany surface creating a barrier between them. "Emma, I think we need to establish clear professional boundaries going forward." The formal tone hurt more than Emma had expected. "I see. Your sustainability project will be moving forward as planned. You'll be working directly with Linda Chen to oversee implementation. I'll be transferring oversight of the project to her to avoid any appearance of favoritism." "Of course," Emma said quietly, though inside she felt like something was breaking. Alexander studied her face, seeing the hurt she was trying to hide. Every instinct he possessed was telling him to go to her, to explain about Robert Mitchell's threats, to promise that he would protect her from the political machinations of corporate America. But he knew that any appearance of special treatment would only make things worse for her. "Emma," he said softly, his professional facade cracking slightly, "this doesn't change how I feel about you. But right now, we need to think about your career, your reputation." "My reputation is already damaged," Emma interrupted, her voice stronger than she felt. "Half the office thinks I slept my way into this opportunity. The other half is waiting to see if the rumors are true." Alexander's hands clenched into fists on his desk. "Then we prove them wrong. We show them that you're a consummate professional who earned every opportunity through merit. And how do we do that while pretending we don't have feelings for each other?" The question hung in the air between them, unanswered and unanswerable. They both knew that their connection was too strong to simply ignore, too powerful to pretend it didn't exist. "I don't know," Alexander admitted quietly. "But Emma, I won't be the reason your career is destroyed. I won't let my feelings for you derail everything you've worked so hard to achieve." Emma stood to leave, her heart breaking with every word. At the door she turned back. "Alexander, for what it's worth, I think you're being noble and self-sacrificing and completely wrong, but I understand why you feel you have to protect me even from yourself." After she left, Alexander sat alone in his office staring at the space she had occupied and wondering if he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He was trying to protect her, but all he had accomplished was pushing away the first woman who had made him feel alive in 3 years. Neither of them knew that their conversation had been observed through the glass walls of Alexander's office by several executives passing in the hallway, or that their body language and obvious emotional connection had only fueled more speculation about the true nature of their relationship. The storm was gathering around them, and soon they would both have to decide what they were willing to risk for love. 3 weeks passed in professional purgatory. Emma threw herself into her sustainability project with Linda Chen, who proved to be an excellent mentor and collaborator. The work was everything Emma had dreamed of, innovative, impactful, and challenging. Yet she found it difficult to enjoy her success while maintaining the careful distance Alexander had insisted upon. They saw each other in meetings, passed in hallways, exchanged polite professional greetings. But the warmth, the connection, the electricity that had sparked between them was carefully buried beneath layers of corporate propriety. Emma caught him looking at her sometimes, his grey eyes holding an intensity that made her pulse quicken, but he would always look away first. The silver necklace remained unworn in her jewelry box, a beautiful reminder of what might have been. It was during a Friday afternoon presentation to potential investors that everything began to unravel. Emma was presenting the preliminary results of the sustainability pilot program: impressive cost savings, positive consumer response, and significant environmental impact reduction. The room was full of Sterling and Associates' most important stakeholders, including Robert Mitchell. "The early results exceed our most optimistic projections," Emma explained, clicking through slides that showed impressive metrics. "Consumer approval ratings for environmentally conscious companies have increased by 37% over the past 6 months, and our pilot participants are reporting higher satisfaction levels with our services." Alexander watched from the back of the conference room, pride swelling in his chest despite his efforts to maintain emotional distance. Emma was brilliant, poised, and completely in command of her material. Every question from the investors was answered with confidence and thorough research. This was her moment to shine, to prove that her success was based entirely on merit. Robert Mitchell sat in the front row, his expression unreadable as Emma fielded questions from his fellow investors. When she concluded her presentation to enthusiastic applause, he was the first to speak. "Very impressive, Ms. Hayes," he said, his tone pleasant but with an edge that made Emma's skin crawl. "Tell me, how long have you been working on this project?" "About 8 months, sir. I began developing these concepts shortly after I started with the company." 8 months, Robert repeated thoughtfully. "And how long have you been working directly with Mr. Sterling on this initiative?" The question was calculated and dangerous. Emma felt every pair of eyes in the room turn toward her, and she could see Alexander tense in her peripheral vision. "Mr. Sterling approved the project for implementation 3 weeks ago, based on the Executive Committee's unanimous recommendation," Emma answered carefully. "Prior to that, I developed the concepts independently as part of my regular marketing responsibilities." "I see. And the Executive Committee presentation, that was your first direct interaction with Mr. Sterling regarding this project?" Emma's heart was pounding, but she kept her voice steady. "Yes, sir, that's correct." Robert smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Interesting, because I have it on good authority that you and Mr. Sterling have had several consultations about this project, including lunch meetings at some rather expensive restaurants." The implication was clear and the room fell silent. Emma felt her cheeks burn with humiliation as she realized what Robert was doing. He was publicly questioning her integrity, suggesting that her professional relationship with Alexander was inappropriate. "Mr. Mitchell." Alexander's voice cut through the tension like a blade. He moved from the back of the room toward the front, his presence commanding immediate attention. "Ms. Hayes's project stands on its own merits, as evidenced by the results she just presented. I fail to see how her dining preferences are relevant to this discussion." "Of course, Alexander. I'm simply trying to understand the development process. Due diligence, you understand." Robert's smile was predatory. "Though I must say the results are impressive. Ms. Hayes clearly has more talents that merit recognition." The way he emphasized talents made Emma feel sick. She could see the speculation in the investors' faces, hear the whispered conversations beginning around the room. If there are no further questions about the sustainability metrics, Alexander said coldly, I believe we can conclude this presentation. But the damage was done. As the investors filed out, Emma could hear fragments of conversation that made her stomach churn. Rather young for such a significant project. Noticed the way Sterling looks at her. Convenient timing for her career advancement. Emma stood frozen at the front of the room as it emptied, holding her presentation materials with hands that trembled slightly. Alexander approached her, his face a mask of controlled fury. Are you all right? He asked quietly, though they were no longer alone in the room. I'm fine, Emma lied, though she felt anything but fine. I should get back to work. Before Alexander could respond, Linda Chen appeared beside them. Emma, that was an excellent presentation. Don't let Mitchell's theatrics diminish what you accomplished today. After Emma left, Alexander found himself face to face with Robert Mitchell, who had lingered behind the other investors. Quite a passionate defense of your employee, Robert said casually. One might almost think you have a personal stake in her success. I have a personal stake in the success of all my employees, Alexander replied icily, particularly those who generate the kind of innovative solutions that drive company growth. Of course, though I have to say, Alexander, you might want to be more careful about appearances. Investors talk, and rumors have a way of affecting stock prices. The threat was barely veiled, and both men understood it perfectly. Robert Mitchell was making it clear that he would use Emma's success and their rumored relationship to damage both of them if Alexander didn't comply with his wishes. Is there something specific you want, Robert? Alexander asked bluntly. I want my niece reinstated with a formal apology for the misunderstanding. I want her placed in a senior position where her enthusiasm can be properly channeled. And I want assurances that personnel decisions in the future will be made with appropriate consideration for all stakeholders. Alexander's jaw clenched. Sarah Mitchell was terminated for documented harassment. That decision stands. Then I'm afraid we have a problem, Robert said pleasantly, because I'm not the only investor concerned about the leadership direction of this company. Questions about favoritism, about the CEO's judgment being compromised by personal relationships, these things have a way of spreading. That evening, Emma sat in her apartment, still reeling from the afternoon's humiliation. The presentation that should have been her moment of triumph had been twisted into something sordid and inappropriate. She had worked so hard to prove herself, to show that she belonged in corporate America based on her ideas and abilities, and Robert Mitchell had destroyed all of that with a few carefully chosen words. Her phone rang, and she saw Alexander's name on the caller ID. She let it go to voicemail, then listened to his message with tears streaming down her face. Emma, I'm so sorry about what happened today. Mitchell's behavior was completely out of line, and I won't let him get away with undermining you like that. Please call me back. We need to talk. She deleted the message without calling back. What was there to say? They both knew that any contact between them would only fuel more speculation, give Robert Mitchell more ammunition to use against them. The next morning brought a new crisis. Emma arrived at work to find a crowd gathered around the reception desk, whispering excitedly about something on their phones. Jenny, the receptionist, looked up as Emma approached. Emma, honey, you might want to see this before you go upstairs, Jenny said sympathetically, holding out her tablet. On the screen was a gossip blog post titled, Corporate Romance or Career Advancement, The Sterling Scandal Explained. The article featured the photograph from Business Insider, but also included new images. Alexander and Emma talking intensely in the hallway, him placing his hand briefly on her back as he guided her toward the conference room, her leaving his office looking emotional. The article didn't outright accuse them of having an affair, but it didn't need to. The implications were clear, and the tone was salacious and damaging. Sources within Sterling & Associates confirmed that junior marketing associate Emma Hayes has received unprecedented access to CEO Alexander Sterling, including private meetings, expensive business lunches, and rapid career advancement. Hayes, 26, joined the company 8 months ago and has already been granted approval for a major company initiative typically reserved for senior executives. Sterling, 37, has been single since the tragic death of his wife 3 years ago. While both parties maintain that their relationship is strictly professional, company insiders suggest otherwise. Emma felt sick reading the article. Every private moment between them had been twisted and sensationalized. The beautiful connection they had developed, the genuine feelings they shared, had been reduced to cheap gossip and career-climbing accusations. Emma. Alexander's voice behind her made her jump. He had seen the crowd gathered around the reception desk and come to investigate. She turned to face him, and he could see the devastation in her green eyes. "I can't do this anymore," she said quietly, just loud enough for him to hear. "Emma, don't let them win. Don't let Mitchell and his gossip destroy what you've built here." "What I've built?" Emma's laugh was bitter. "My reputation is ruined, Alexander. No one will ever believe I earned anything on my own merit. Every success, every opportunity, will be attributed to our rumored relationship." Alexander wanted to reach for her, to comfort her, but he was acutely aware of their audience. This will blow over. Once the project shows continued success— "No, it won't," Emma interrupted. "You know it won't. As long as we're both here, as long as we're working in the same company, this shadow will follow both of us." The truth of her words hit Alexander like a physical blow. She was right. No matter how professional they remained, no matter how much distance they maintained, the speculation would continue. Emma's brilliant career would always be overshadowed by rumors of favoritism and inappropriate relationships. "What are you saying?" he asked, though he dreaded the answer. "I'm saying that I've been offered a position with Harrison Environmental Consulting in Boston. They want me to head their new sustainability division. I've been thinking about it for weeks, and after yesterday, after this," she gestured toward the gossip blog, "I think I have to take it." Alexander felt the world tilt beneath his feet. "Emma, no, you can't leave. This company needs you. Your project needs you." "The project will be fine with Linda Chen," Emma said firmly, "and the company will survive without me. But my career won't survive if I stay." She was right, and they both knew it. The rational part of Alexander's mind understood that Emma leaving was probably the best solution for everyone involved, but the thought of her walking out of his life, of never seeing her smile or hearing her passionate explanations of environmental initiatives, was unbearable. "When?" he asked quietly. "They want me to start in 2 weeks. I was planning to give my notice on Monday." They stood in the lobby, surrounded by curious colleagues and devastating gossip, both knowing that this might be one of their last private conversations. The connection that had developed between them, the love they had confessed to each other in the parking garage, was being sacrificed to protect Emma's professional future. "I need to get back to work," Emma said finally, her voice carefully controlled. As she walked toward the elevators, Alexander watched her go, feeling more helpless than he had since Catherine's accident. He was losing another woman he loved, but this time it wasn't to tragedy. It was to the cruel realities of corporate politics and social expectations. Robert Mitchell's campaign was working perfectly. He was forcing Emma out of the company and away from Alexander, clearing the path for his niece's return while asserting his power over Sterling and Associates' leadership. But Alexander Sterling hadn't built a multi-million-dollar company by accepting defeat. As he watched Emma disappear into the elevator, he made a decision that would change everything. If Robert Mitchell wanted to play games, Alexander would show him what happened when you threatened the people he loved. Emma's resignation letter sat on her desk for 3 days before she found the courage to submit it. Each morning she would arrive at work intending to deliver it to HR, and each evening she would leave with it still unsigned in her bag. The weight of leaving everything she had worked for and everyone she had come to love felt unbearable. Meanwhile, Alexander was conducting his own investigation. He had spent the past week meeting quietly with private investigators, lawyers, and financial analysts, building a case that would expose Robert Mitchell's true character. What he discovered was worse than he had imagined. Mitchell had a pattern of using his investment power to manipulate company executives, particularly when it came to protecting his family members from consequences of their actions. 3 other companies had succumbed to similar pressure tactics, promoting unqualified relatives or covering up inappropriate behavior to maintain Mitchell's financial backing. More damaging still, Alexander's team uncovered evidence of Mitchell's own questionable business practices, tax evasion, securities fraud, and environmental violations that would interest several federal agencies. But building a case would take months, and Emma was planning to leave in less than 2 weeks. It was Thursday evening when everything came to a head. Emma was working late, trying to finish transitioning her projects to Linda Chen, when she heard raised voices coming from Alexander's office. The executive floor was otherwise empty, and sound carried clearly through the glass-walled conference rooms. "You're making a mistake, Alexander." Robert Mitchell's voice was angry and threatening, a very expensive mistake. Emma moved closer to the conference room where the two men were facing off, staying in the shadows, but able to see and hear their confrontation. "The only mistake I made was not looking into your business practices sooner," Alexander replied coldly. "Did you really think I wouldn't investigate a man who was trying to blackmail me?" "Blackmail?" Robert laughed harshly. "I prefer to call it sound business advice. You're letting your feelings for a junior employee cloud your judgment, and it's affecting your ability to lead this company. My feelings for Emma Hayes are irrelevant to this conversation. What's relevant is your attempt to manipulate personnel decisions through threats and intimidation. That little marketing girl has you completely twisted around her finger," Robert sneered. "Do you really think she cares about you, or is she just smart enough to recognize an opportunity when she sees it?" Alexander's hands clenched into fists. "Be very careful, Robert. You're talking about a woman He stopped himself before completing the sentence, but the implication was clear. "A woman you what? Love?" Robert's smile was cruel. How touching, and how convenient for her. "Does she know about your investigation into my business affairs? Does she know you're willing to risk everything for her, or is she planning to abandon ship before the scandal breaks?" Emma's heart stopped. Alexander was investigating Robert Mitchell, risking his own position to defend her. "Emma's resignation has nothing to do with you," Alexander said firmly. "She's leaving because you and your gossip campaign have made it impossible for her to be recognized for her abilities." "Her abilities," Robert repeated mockingly. "Is that what we're calling it? Well, her abilities certainly advanced her career quickly, from junior associate to executive presenter in 8 months. Quite remarkable. Her ideas saved this company $12 million in the pilot program alone," Alexander shot back. "Her environmental initiatives have positioned us as industry leaders and increased our client satisfaction ratings by 30%. Those are facts, not favoritism. Facts that conveniently emerged after you became personally interested in their creator." Emma watched Alexander struggle with his composure, saw the moment when his professional restraint finally snapped. "You want to know about my personal interest in Emma Hayes?" Alexander's voice was dangerously quiet. "Fine, I'll tell you. I'm in love with her. Completely, desperately, irrevocably in love with her. She's brilliant, kind, innovative, and everything I never thought I'd be lucky enough to find again. And yes, I would risk everything for her, my position, my company, my reputation, because she's worth it." Emma felt tears streaming down her face as she heard Alexander's public declaration of love. The vulnerability, the fierce protectiveness, the absolute certainty in his voice made her heart soar and break at the same time. "But here's what you don't understand, Robert," Alexander continued, his voice gaining strength. "Emma doesn't know about my investigation into your business practices. She doesn't know I'm willing to sacrifice everything for her. She's leaving because she believes it's the right thing to do for her career and for this company. She's protecting both of us from the scandal you've created, even though it's destroying her to do it." Robert's expression shifted from smugness to uncertainty. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that Emma Hayes is the most selfless, principled person I've ever known. She would rather sacrifice her own happiness than damage this company or my reputation. She's not the calculating opportunist you've painted her as. She's the woman I want to spend the rest of my life with, and I'm losing her because of your manipulation." Emma covered her mouth to stifle a sob. Alexander was willing to risk everything for her, and she was planning to run away to Boston. "Even if all of that is true," Robert said, some of his bluster returning, "the fact remains that an affair between a CEO and a subordinate is inappropriate and potentially damaging to shareholder interests." "Which is why," Alexander said calmly, "Emma's resignation will be effective immediately, and I'm promoting her to senior environmental consultant, reporting directly to the board of directors instead of to me. She'll be based in our new sustainability division, with her own staff and budget, working as an external consultant rather than a direct employee." Emma's eyes widened. Alexander had found a way to keep her at the company while eliminating the problematic hierarchy between them. "That's a significant financial investment," Robert said suspiciously. It's an investment in the future of this company and the environment, Alexander replied. Emma's initiatives have already proven their value. This promotion is based entirely on performance metrics and projected returns. And your personal feelings for her? Alexander met Robert's gaze steadily. My personal feelings are my own business. But if you're concerned about propriety, let me be clear. I intend to court Emma Hayes properly, with complete transparency and appropriate professional boundaries. If she'll have me, I plan to marry her. If that creates a conflict of interest for your investment portfolio, you're welcome to divest. The conference room fell silent. Emma stood frozen in the shadows, her heart pounding as she processed what she had just heard. Alexander was restructuring her entire position, risking his relationship with a major investor, publicly declaring his intentions, all to protect her and give them a chance at a future together. You're willing to lose 15% of your investment capital for this woman? Robert asked incredulously. I'm willing to lose everything for her, Alexander said simply. The question is whether you're willing to lose the most profitable investment in your portfolio over your wounded pride. Robert was quiet for a long moment, clearly calculating the financial implications of withdrawing his investment. Sterling and Associates stock had risen significantly since Emma's sustainability initiatives were announced, and the projected long-term growth was substantial. I want my niece reinstated, he said finally. Sarah Mitchell will not be reinstated, but I'm willing to provide her with a glowing recommendation for positions at other companies, along with a generous severance package that reflects her potential. It was a face-saving compromise that allowed Robert to claim victory while keeping Sarah away from Emma and the company. And the environmental consultant position for Ms. Hayes is contingent on her acceptance and has nothing to do with our personal relationship, Alexander said firmly. She'll report to Linda Chen and the board of directors. Her success or failure will be based entirely on performance metrics. Emma realized this was her moment. She could slip away, pretend she hadn't overheard this conversation, and let Alexander continue to sacrifice everything for her without her knowledge. Or she could trust him, trust herself, and fight for the love they both deserved. Taking a deep breath, she stepped into the conference room. "Excuse me," she said quietly, her voice only slightly tremulous despite her racing heart. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I couldn't help overhearing." Both men turned toward her, Alexander's face showing a mixture of surprise and concern, Robert's showing calculation and annoyance. "Emma," Alexander said softly, "how long have you been—" "Long enough," she replied, her eyes never leaving his face. "Long enough to hear you say you're willing to risk everything for me." "Emma, I can explain—" "No," she interrupted, stepping closer to him. "Let me speak first. Mr. Mitchell," she turned to address Robert directly, "you're right about one thing. I'm in love with Alexander. Completely, hopelessly, terrifyingly in love with him. But you're wrong about everything else." Robert's eyebrows rose, but he remained silent. "I didn't pursue a relationship with Alexander for career advancement. In fact, I've been planning to leave the company specifically to protect both of our reputations. I never asked for special treatment, expensive lunches, or career opportunities. Everything I've achieved here has been through my own work and research." She turned back to Alexander, her voice becoming softer, more intimate despite their audience. "And Alexander, you beautiful, noble, impossible man, you don't have to sacrifice everything for me. You don't have to risk your company or your relationships with investors. I can go to Boston, start fresh, build a career where no one questions my motives or abilities." "No," Alexander said firmly, moving closer to her. "I won't let you run away from us, Emma. I've already lost one woman I loved. I won't lose another, especially not to corporate politics and social expectations. But the gossip, the speculation, will die down once we're transparent about our relationship, and I'm no longer your direct supervisor," Alexander said, reaching out to take her hands. "Emma, I know this is complicated and risky and probably crazy, but I love you. I want to build a life with you, a future with you. I want to see your brilliant environmental initiatives change the world, and I want to be there cheering you on every step of the way." Emma felt tears streaming down her face as she looked into his grey eyes, seeing love and determination and absolute certainty. "Are you sure?" she whispered. "Because once we do this, there's no going back." "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," Alexander replied, his voice rough with emotion. Robert Mitchell cleared his throat pointedly. This is all very touching, but I still have concerns about the appropriateness. Mr. Mitchell, Emma interrupted, turning to face him with newfound confidence. With all due respect, your concerns are noted, but irrelevant. Alexander and I are both adults, and our personal relationship is our own business. Professionally, I'm excited about the opportunity to lead the sustainability division, and I guarantee you'll see impressive returns on that investment. And if the board of directors objects to this arrangement? Alexander's smile was sharp. Then they'll have to decide whether they value growth and innovation over outdated prejudices. I'm confident in their business judgment. As the confrontation concluded, and Robert Mitchell departed with grudging acceptance of the new arrangements, Emma and Alexander were finally alone in the conference room. Did you mean it? Emma asked quietly. About courting me properly, about marriage? Alexander stepped closer, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his grey eyes. I meant every word. Emma Hayes, you turned my world upside down from the moment you walked into my office in tears. I want to spend the rest of my life making sure you never have to cry like that again. And if people talk, if they continue to speculate about our relationship, Alexander reached up to cup her face gently in his hands. Then let them talk. I'd rather face gossip with you than face anything else without you. Emma smiled through her tears, finally allowing herself to believe that they might actually have a future together. In that case, she said, I accept the promotion, and the courtship, and whatever comes next. Alexander's smile was radiant as he leaned down to rest his forehead against hers. What comes next is everything, Emma. Everything we've both been too afraid to hope for. In the quiet of the conference room, surrounded by the ghosts of corporate battles and political maneuvering, they finally allowed themselves to embrace the love that had been growing between them from the very beginning. 2 weeks later, Emma found herself standing in the newly renovated Sustainability Division office, watching as her team of 5 environmental specialists arranged their workstations. The space was modern and bright, with living walls of plants and energy-efficient lighting that reflected the department's mission. Her own office had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, and a door that finally gave her the privacy she had never enjoyed in her marketing cubicle. Alexander had kept his promise. The promotion was announced company-wide, with detailed explanations of Emma's qualifications, her pilot program success metrics, and the projected financial benefits of expanding the sustainability initiative. The gossip hadn't disappeared entirely, but it had shifted from salacious speculation to grudging respect for her professional achievements. Miss Hayes, her assistant Marcus, appeared in her doorway. Mr. Sterling is here to see you. Emma's pulse quickened as it always did when Alexander was near, but now she didn't have to hide her reaction. Send him in, please. Alexander entered her office carrying 2 coffee cups and wearing a smile that made her heart flutter. He had maintained appropriate professional distance in public over the past 2 weeks, but their private moments had been filled with growing intimacy and anticipation. Coffee delivery? He said, setting a cup on her desk. How's the first official day as division head? Overwhelming and wonderful, Emma replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. I still can't believe this is real sometimes. It's real, Alexander assured her, moving around her desk to stand beside her chair. And you've earned every bit of it. The casual way he touched her shoulder, the warmth in his voice when he spoke to her, the obvious pride in his expression, everything about their interaction spoke of a deepening relationship that went far beyond professional courtesy. Alexander, Emma said softly, turning in her chair to face him, are you free for dinner tonight? I thought maybe we could celebrate properly. I thought you'd never ask, he replied, his grey eyes darkening with an intensity that made her breath catch. My place or yours? Yours, Emma said without hesitation. I want to see where you live, how you live when you're not being the powerful CEO. That evening, Emma stood outside Alexander's penthouse apartment, nervous in a way she hadn't been since their first lunch together. She had chosen her outfit carefully, a flowing emerald dress that brought out her eyes, paired with the silver necklace he had given her weeks ago. It was the first time she had worn it, and it felt like a declaration of trust and acceptance. Alexander opened the door, and Emma's breath caught. He had changed from his usual business attire into dark jeans and a soft grey sweater that emphasized his broad shoulders and made his eyes look like storm clouds. His hair was slightly mussed, as if he had been running his fingers through it, and he looked younger, more relaxed than she had ever seen him. "You look beautiful," he said quietly, his gaze lingering on the necklace at her throat. "Thank you for wearing it." "Thank you for giving me a reason to," Emma replied, stepping into his apartment. The space was exactly what she had expected. Sophisticated, masculine, with clean lines and expensive furnishings. But there were personal touches that revealed the man behind the CEO facade. Family photos on the mantel, well-worn books scattered on side tables, and a guitar in the corner that suggested hidden musical talents. "You play?" Emma asked, nodding toward the instrument. "Badly," Alexander admitted with a self-deprecating smile. "It was Catherine's. She tried to teach me, but I was never very good at it." Emma appreciated that he could mention his late wife without the conversation becoming awkward or painful. It spoke to his emotional healing and his ability to honor his past while embracing his future. "Will you play something for me sometime?" she asked gently. "If you promise not to laugh at my terrible technique," Alexander replied, leading her to the kitchen where he had prepared dinner himself. The meal was simple but perfect. Grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, and a bottle of wine that paired beautifully with both the food and the intimate atmosphere. They talked about everything and nothing. Emma's plans for expanding the sustainability program, Alexander's passion for environmental conservation, their favorite books, their childhood memories, their dreams for the future. As the evening progressed, Emma found herself relaxing completely for the first time in weeks. Here in Alexander's private space, away from office politics and public scrutiny, she could simply be herself with the man she loved. After dinner, they moved to his living room, settling on the sofa with glasses of wine and the city lights sparkling through the windows behind them. "Emma," Alexander said softly, setting down his wine and turning to face her fully, "I need you to know something." "What is it?" "These past few weeks, getting to know you without the complications of office hierarchy, seeing you flourish in your new role. It's been incredible. You're even more amazing than I thought possible." Emma felt heat rise in her cheeks under his intense gaze. "Alexander, let me finish," he said gently, reaching out to take her hand. "I know we agreed to take things slowly, to build this relationship properly. But Emma, I can't pretend anymore that what I feel for you is casual or uncertain. I'm completely irrevocably in love with you." Emma's heart hammered against her ribs as she looked into his eyes and saw nothing but truth and vulnerability. "I love you too," she whispered. "So much it terrifies me sometimes." Alexander moved closer, close enough that she could feel his warmth, smell his cologne, see the gold flecks in his grey eyes. "May I kiss you?" he asked quietly, his voice rough with desire and tenderness. Instead of answering with words, Emma reached up to cup his face in her hands, her fingers tracing the strong line of his jaw. "I've been waiting for you to ask," she whispered. Alexander's hands framed her face as he lowered his head, his lips brushing against hers in a kiss that was gentle and questioning at first, then deeper and more passionate as Emma responded with equal fervor. The kiss was everything Emma had imagined and more, tender yet demanding, soft yet intense, filled with months of suppressed longing and the promise of everything they could build together. Alexander tasted like wine and possibility, and when his hands tangled in her hair, Emma felt like she was drowning in the best possible way. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Alexander rested his forehead against hers. "That was worth waiting for," he said softly, his thumb tracing her cheek. "Definitely worth the wait," Emma agreed, her voice slightly breathless. They spent the rest of the evening talking quietly, stealing kisses, and marveling at how natural it felt to be together without barriers or complications. As Alexander walked Emma to the door later that night, both of them knew that everything had changed. The careful professional distance, the suppressed feelings, the uncertainty about their future, all of it had been swept away by one perfect kiss and the absolute certainty that they belonged together. "Dinner tomorrow?" Alexander asked, reluctant to let her leave. "Every night," Emma replied with a smile that lit up her entire face. "If you'll have me." "Always," Alexander promised, kissing her once more before she left. "Always." 3 months into their official relationship, Emma and Alexander had settled into a rhythm that felt both exciting and comfortingly domestic. Their morning routine had become sacred. Alexander would stop by Emma's office with coffee and a pastry from the bakery she loved, and they would spend 10 minutes discussing their respective days before diving into work. The office gossip had largely died down, replaced by grudging respect for their professionalism and Emma's undeniable success in her new role. The sustainability division had exceeded all projections, securing 3 major client contracts and garnering positive media attention for Sterling and Associates' environmental leadership. The Morrison account came through, Emma announced, as Alexander entered her office that Tuesday morning, practically glowing with excitement. They want to implement our full sustainability package across all their manufacturing facilities. Alexander's face lit up with genuine pride. Emma, that's incredible. How much is the contract worth? $8.5 million over 3 years, Emma said, barely able to contain her enthusiasm. Plus performance bonuses if we exceed their environmental targets. Alexander set down the coffee cups and pulled Emma into his arms, spinning her around her office in a moment of pure joy. When he set her down, they were both laughing, and Emma's hands were resting on his chest. "I'm so proud of you," Alexander said softly, his expression shifting from celebratory to tender. "You've built something extraordinary here." "We've built something extraordinary," Emma corrected, unconsciously playing with the button on his shirt. "I couldn't have done any of this without your support." The intimate moment was interrupted by a knock on Emma's door. Marcus appeared with an apologetic expression. "Sorry to interrupt, but Ms. Hayes, you have a visitor. Your mother is here." Emma's face went pale. "My mother? She didn't tell me she was coming to the city." Alexander squeezed Emma's hand reassuringly. "Do you want me to stay?" "No, that might make things worse," Emma said quietly. "She's still concerned about us." Alexander nodded understandingly. Despite Emma's attempts to explain their relationship, her mother remained skeptical about her daughter's involvement with her wealthy, powerful boss. Emma's mother, Patricia Hayes, was exactly as Alexander had imagined her, a woman in her mid-50s with Emma's green eyes and auburn hair, though hers was streaked with silver. She was smaller than Emma, but her presence filled the room with protective maternal energy. "Mom, what a surprise," Emma said, hugging her mother while shooting worried glances toward Alexander. "I hope it's a good surprise," Patricia replied, studying her daughter's face carefully. "You look tired, sweetheart. Are you working too hard?" "I'm fine, Mom. Just busy with some exciting new projects. What brings you to the city?" "I wanted to see where my daughter works, meet the people she's been telling me about." Patricia's gaze moved pointedly toward Alexander, who was still standing near Emma's desk. "Mom, this is Alexander Sterling. Alexander, my mother, Patricia Hayes." Alexander stepped forward with his most charming smile, extending his hand. "Mrs. Hayes, it's a pleasure to finally meet you. Emma speaks of you constantly." Patricia shook his hand, her expression politely neutral. "Mr. Sterling, thank you for taking such an interest in my daughter's career." The emphasis on interest was slight but unmistakable, and Alexander could see where Emma inherited her direct communication style. "Your daughter is exceptionally talented," Alexander replied smoothly. "Her work has transformed this company's approach to environmental responsibility." "So I've heard," Patricia said, her eyes never leaving Alexander's face. "It's remarkable how quickly she's advanced since starting here." Emma intervened before the conversation could become more pointed. "Mom, would you like to see the sustainability division? I'd love to show you what we've accomplished." For the next hour, Emma gave her mother a tour of the office, explaining her projects with the passion and expertise that never failed to impress Alexander. Patricia listened intently, asking intelligent questions and gradually warming to her daughter's obvious professional success. "This is impressive, Emma," Patricia admitted as they concluded the tour. "You've clearly found your calling." "Thank you, Mum. It means everything to have your approval." "You don't need my approval for your career, sweetheart. You never have. It's the other aspects of your life I'm concerned about." Emma sighed, knowing they couldn't avoid the conversation any longer. "Mom, Alexander and I are adults who can make their own decisions," Patricia interrupted. "But Emma, I'm your mother. It's my job to worry about you." That evening, Emma brought her mother to Alexander's penthouse for dinner, hoping that seeing them together in a relaxed, private setting would ease Patricia's concerns. Alexander had prepared a simple but elegant meal, and he made every effort to charm Emma's mother without seeming manipulative or insincere. He asked about her work as a nurse, her garden, her volunteer activities at the local church. He listened attentively to her stories about Emma's childhood, laughing at tales of her daughter's determination and stubborn streak. "She once decided to save every stray cat in the neighborhood," Patricia said, warming to the subject of her daughter's compassionate nature. "We had 17 cats living in our garage before her father finally put his foot down." "Only 17?" Alexander teased, looking at Emma with such obvious affection that Patricia couldn't miss it. "I'm surprised it wasn't more." As the evening progressed, Patricia observed the interactions between her daughter and Alexander. She saw the way he looked at Emma when she laughed, like she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. She noticed how he automatically refilled Emma's water glass, how he included her in every conversation, how his entire posture softened whenever Emma spoke. More importantly, she saw her daughter's happiness. Emma glowed in Alexander's presence, confident and radiant in a way Patricia had never seen before. After dinner, while Emma was in the kitchen preparing coffee, Patricia found herself alone with Alexander on the terrace overlooking the city. "Mr. Sterling," she began formally. "Alexander, please." "Alexander, I need you to understand something about my daughter. Emma has always been trusting, sometimes too trusting. She sees the best in people, even when they don't deserve it." Alexander nodded, understanding the protective mother's concern. "She told me about your reservations regarding our relationship. I respect that, Mrs. Hayes." "Do you? Because from where I sit, this looks like a fairy tale that's too good to be true. Powerful, wealthy man sweeps away small-town girl, transforms her life overnight. Those stories don't usually end well for the girl." Alexander was quiet for a moment, considering his words carefully. "Mrs. Hayes, I understand your skepticism. If Emma were my daughter, I'd have the same concerns. But I need you to know that Emma transformed my life, not the other way around. She brought light back into a world that had been grey for 3 years. She challenged me, inspired me, made me remember what it felt like to hope for something beyond work and obligations." Patricia studied his face, noting the sincerity in his voice and the obvious emotion behind his words. "Emma doesn't need me to take care of her," Alexander continued. "She's brilliant and strong and perfectly capable of taking care of herself, but I want to be the person who gets to support her dreams, celebrate her successes, and love her through whatever challenges life brings. Not because she needs me to, but because loving Emma Hayes is the greatest privilege I've ever been given." Patricia was quiet for a long moment, watching the city lights twinkle below them. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "That was a very pretty speech, Alexander." It was the truth. Emma appeared on the terrace with a tray of coffee, immediately sensing the tension. "Everything okay out here?" "Everything's fine, sweetheart," Patricia said, accepting a cup from her daughter. "Alexander and I were just getting to know each other better." The rest of the evening passed peacefully, with Patricia gradually relaxing and even laughing at Alexander's stories about his early business mistakes. When it was time for her to return to her hotel, she hugged Emma tightly. "He loves you," Patricia whispered in her daughter's ear. "Really loves you. I can see it." "I love him too, Mom. More than I thought possible." "Then that's all that matters." "But Emma?" "Yes? Make sure he knows how lucky he is to have you." After Patricia left, Emma found Alexander cleaning up the dinner dishes, looking thoughtful. "What did you and my mother talk about on the terrace?" Emma asked, wrapping her arms around his waist from behind. Alexander turned in her embrace, pulling her close. "She wanted to make sure I understood how precious you are." "And what did you tell her?" "That I already knew," Alexander said simply, leaning down to kiss her forehead, "and that I plan to spend every day proving I'm worthy of that gift." Emma smiled, rising on her tiptoes to kiss him properly. "You don't have to prove anything to me, Alexander. You already have my heart." As they stood in his kitchen holding each other and marveling at how far they'd come, both Emma and Alexander knew they had turned another corner in their relationship. With her mother's grudging approval and their professional lives successfully balanced, they were finally free to explore the depths of their love without fear or reservation. 6 months after they began dating officially, Emma and Alexander faced their first real crisis as a couple. It began with a seemingly innocent phone call on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Emma was reviewing sustainability reports when her phone rang, displaying an unknown number with a Boston area code. Emma Hayes speaking. Ms. Hayes, this is Jennifer Walsh from Harrison Environmental Consulting. We met briefly at the Green Innovation Conference last month. Emma remembered the woman, sharp, professional, and impressively knowledgeable about environmental policy. Of course, Jennifer. How can I help you? I'm calling with an extraordinary opportunity. Our CEO is stepping down, and the board has asked me to reach out to you about taking over the company. We've been following your work at Sterling & Associates, and frankly, we're blown away. The Morrison contract, the Sustainable Packaging Initiative, your thought leadership in the industry. You're exactly what we need. Emma's pen stilled in her hand. I appreciate the interest, but I'm very happy in my current position. I understand, and I respect your loyalty. But Emma, this would be CEO of the fastest growing environmental consulting firm on the East Coast. Full autonomy, unlimited budget for innovation, the chance to shape environmental policy at the highest levels. Plus, the compensation package is substantial. Despite herself, Emma found herself listening as Jennifer outlined an offer that was staggering: triple her current salary, equity shares, complete creative control, and the opportunity to build something entirely her own. I need to think about it, Emma said finally. Of course, take your time. But Emma, this offer won't stay open forever. The board wants someone in place within 6 weeks. After ending the call, Emma sat in her office staring out at the city skyline, her mind racing. The opportunity was incredible, everything she had ever dreamed of professionally. But it would mean leaving New York, leaving Sterling & Associates, leaving Alexander. That evening, Emma was unusually quiet during dinner at Alexander's apartment. He noticed her distraction as she pushed food around her plate without really eating. What's wrong? Alexander asked gently, reaching across the table to touch her hand. You've been somewhere else all evening. Emma looked up at him, seeing the concern in his grey eyes, and felt her heart constrict. How could she tell him about the job offer? How could she even be considering leaving everything they had built together? I got an interesting phone call today, she said carefully. A job offer. Alexander's expression immediately became guarded. What kind of job offer? CEO position at Harrison Environmental Consulting in Boston. They want me to take over the entire company. Alexander set down his fork, his face carefully neutral despite the obvious shock. That's incredible, Emma. They must think very highly of you. It would be a huge opportunity, Emma said quietly, watching his face for any sign of what he was thinking. Complete autonomy, unlimited resources to implement environmental initiatives, the chance to influence policy at the federal level. It sounds like everything you've worked for, Alexander said, and Emma could hear him struggling to keep his voice steady. Alexander, You should take it, he interrupted, his words hitting her like a physical blow. Emma stared at him in shock. What? You should take the job, Alexander repeated, though she could see the pain in his eyes. Emma, this is your dream. You'd be CEO of your own company, able to implement your vision without any corporate politics or limitations. But what about us? What about our relationship? Alexander was quiet for a long moment, and Emma could see him struggling with his emotions. Emma, I won't be the reason you don't reach your full potential. I won't be the chain that holds you back from everything you could accomplish. You're not a chain, Emma protested, tears starting to form in her eyes. Alexander, you've been nothing but supportive of my career. Have I? Alexander's voice was bitter. Or have I been selfish, keeping you in a position where you'll always be seen as Sterling's girlfriend, instead of the brilliant environmental leader you are? Emma felt her world tilting. Is that really what you think? Alexander stood up from the table, pacing to the windows as he ran his hands through his hair. Emma, be honest with me. If we weren't together, if you didn't have personal ties keeping you here, would you take this job? The question hung in the air between them, and Emma's silence was answer enough. That's what I thought, Alexander said quietly. Alexander, please, can't we at least discuss this? Maybe there's a way. What way? Alexander turned to face her, his expression tortured. Long distance? You flying back and forth between Boston and New York. Both of us building careers in different cities, seeing each other on weekends if we're lucky. People make long-distance relationships work all the time. Do they? Really? Alexander's voice was rising despite his efforts to stay calm. Emma, you'd be running a company, working 18-hour days, traveling constantly. I'd be here doing the same thing. When would we see each other? How long before the distance and the stress and the separate lives tear us apart? Emma felt tears streaming down her face as she realized he was probably right. So what are you saying? That we should break up so I can take this job? I'm saying that I love you too much to watch you give up your dreams for me. The words were meant to be loving and selfless, but they felt like rejection to Emma. And what if I don't want to give up my dreams? What if my dreams include you? Alexander's composure finally cracked, and she could see the pain he was trying so hard to hide. Emma, don't you think I want that too? Don't you think the idea of losing you is killing me? But I've already lost one woman I loved. At least this time it would be because she was living her best life, not because life was cut short. This is not the same thing, Emma said fiercely. Catherine didn't choose to leave you. This would be me choosing to leave, and that's completely different. Is it? The end result is the same. I lose the woman I love. They stood in his elegant apartment, the dinner growing cold on the table between them, both crying and both trying to be noble while their hearts broke. I need time to think, Emma said finally, about the job, about us, about what I really want. Alexander nodded, wiping his eyes. Of course, take all the time you need. But as Emma gathered her things to leave, both of them knew that time might not be enough to solve the fundamental problem they faced. How do you choose between love and ambition when both feel essential to who you are? Emma, Alexander called as she reached the door. When she turned back, he looked more vulnerable than she had ever seen him. Whatever you decide, I want you to know that loving you has been the best part of my life. Even if it ends here, even if you go to Boston, I'll never regret a single moment we've shared. Emma's heart shattered completely. Alexander, don't say anything now, he said gently. Just think about what will make you happiest in the long run. Not what you think you should do, not what will hurt the least, but what will give you the life you really want. As Emma left his apartment that night, she carried the weight of an impossible choice. The job offer represented everything she had worked for professionally: independence, authority, the chance to make a real difference on a massive scale. But Alexander represented something she had never expected to find, a love that had transformed her life and made her believe in happily ever after. How do you choose between the career of your dreams and the love of your life? And why did it feel like choosing one meant losing everything that mattered? For the first time since walking into Alexander's office in tears all those months ago, Emma felt truly lost, caught between two futures that both seemed essential and mutually exclusive. The crisis that would test their relationship had arrived, and neither of them knew if their love was strong enough to survive it. Emma spent the next week in emotional purgatory. She threw herself into work during the day, trying to distract herself from the impossible decision she faced. But every evening brought sleepless nights filled with agonizing over her future. Alexander maintained professional distance at the office, their morning coffee routine suspended by mutual unspoken agreement. When they passed in the hallway, his polite nods and careful smiles felt like daggers to Emma's heart. She could see the pain he was trying to hide, the way his shoulders tensed whenever she was near, the careful way he avoided looking directly at her for too long. On Friday afternoon, Emma found herself standing outside Alexander's office, her hand raised to knock but unable to follow through. Through the glass walls, she could see him bent over his desk, his usual perfect posture slightly slumped with exhaustion and stress. Even from a distance, she could see the toll their separation was taking on him. "Go in," a voice said behind her. Emma turned to find Linda Chen watching her with sympathetic eyes. "I don't want to disturb him," Emma said quietly. "Emma, that man hasn't been sleeping or eating properly all week. He's trying to do the noble thing, but he's miserable. You both are." Linda stepped closer, her voice gentle but firm. "Whatever's happening between you two, it's affecting everyone around you. The tension is palpable. It's complicated, Linda. Love always is. But Emma, I've been in corporate America for 20 years, and I've never seen two people more meant for each other. Don't let fear or pride or misplaced nobility destroy something extraordinary." That evening, Emma's best friend Jessica called from Boston, where she had moved the previous year. "I heard about the Harrison job offer," Jessica said without preamble. "The whole environmental community is buzzing about it." "Emma, this is huge." "I know how big it is," Emma replied tiredly. "That's part of the problem." "What do you mean, problem? This is everything you've worked for. When we were in college, you used to talk about running your own environmental consulting firm. Now someone's handing you one of the most successful companies in the field." "It's not that simple, Jess." "Because of Alexander." Jessica's voice softened with understanding. "Em, I get that you care about him. But honey, relationships end. Career opportunities like this come once in a lifetime. This isn't just any relationship," Emma protested. "I love him, Jess. Really love him. The kind of love that changes everything about how you see the world." "I know you think you do. I don't think I do. I know I do." Emma's voice was firm despite her exhaustion. "Jessica, I've never felt anything like this before. Alexander makes me want to be the best version of myself. He challenges me, supports me, makes me laugh, makes me feel beautiful and brilliant and capable of anything." "But Emma, what happens in 5 years when the honeymoon phase ends? What happens when you realize you gave up the chance to lead one of the most influential environmental firms in the country for a man?" The question haunted Emma long after they hung up. Was Jessica right? Would she regret choosing love over ambition? Or would she regret the opposite choice even more? On Sunday morning, Emma found herself in the small garden behind her apartment building, sitting on a bench among the flowers she had planted when she first moved to the city. The space had always been her refuge, a place where she could think clearly. Her phone buzzed with a text from Alexander. "I know you need space to think, but I have something that belongs to you. Can I drop it off?" 20 minutes later, Alexander appeared in the garden carrying a small wrapped package. He looked tired, but still devastatingly handsome in jeans and a navy sweater. Emma's heart ached just looking at him. "You didn't have to bring it personally," she said softly as he sat beside her on the bench, careful to maintain distance between them. "I wanted to see you," Alexander admitted. "I know I said I'd give you space, but Emma, this week has been hell without you." Emma accepted the package with trembling hands. Inside was the leather portfolio he had given her for her first executive presentation, along with a letter in his distinctive handwriting. "Alexander, I can't accept—" "It's not a gift," he said quickly. "It's yours, you earned it, and you should have it regardless of what you decide about us or the job." Emma opened the letter, her vision blurring with tears as she read his words. "Emma, I've spent this week trying to be noble, trying to push you toward what I think is best for your career. But I realized I've been making the same mistake I made after Catherine died, deciding what's best for someone else without asking what they actually want. So I'm asking, what do you want, Emma? Not what you think you should want, not what will impress others or advance your career, but what will make you truly happy. If the answer is Boston and Harrison Environmental, then I will support that decision completely. I'll even help you pack and celebrate your success, because you deserve every opportunity the world can offer. But if any part of your heart wants to stay, wants to build something here with me, then I'm asking you to listen to that part. Because, Emma, I don't want to be noble anymore. I want to be selfish and ask you to choose me, choose us, choose the life we could build together. I love you beyond reason, beyond logic, beyond what's probably wise or sensible. I love your brilliant mind, your compassionate heart, your terrible jokes, and the way you make everything in my world brighter, just by existing in it. Whatever you decide, I'll respect it. But please, make the choice based on what you want, not on what everyone else thinks you should want. All my love, Alexander." 4 months after Emma chose love and launched her own environmental consulting firm, life had settled into a rhythm that felt both exciting and blissfully domestic. Emma Hayes Environmental Solutions occupied a renovated brownstone in Midtown, with a team of 12 specialists and a client roster that grew weekly. Alexander had been her first major client, but her reputation had quickly attracted businesses across the Northeast seeking sustainable solutions. Their relationship had deepened through the challenges of building a company together. Alexander served as an unofficial business advisor, helping Emma navigate complex negotiations and strategic decisions, while she brought fresh environmental perspectives to Sterling and Associates operations. They had found the perfect balance between supporting each other professionally and maintaining their individual identities. It was a crisp December evening when Alexander suggested they take a walk through Central Park after dinner. Emma was exhausted from a day of client presentations, but something in his voice, a nervous energy she rarely heard, made her agree. "You seem distracted tonight," Emma observed as they strolled along the snow-dusted paths, their breath visible in the cold air. "Is everything all right at Sterling and Associates?" "Everything's perfect at work," Alexander replied, his hand warm in hers despite the winter chill. "I was actually thinking about us." Emma's pulse quickened at his serious tone. "What about us?" Alexander stopped walking, turning to face her beneath a street lamp that cast golden light across the snowy park. "Emma, do you remember the first time we walked through here together? It was after that disastrous board meeting where Morrison questioned your qualifications." "I remember," Emma smiled. "You bought me hot chocolate and told me that some people's opinions weren't worth my tears." "I also told you that you were going to change the world," Alexander said softly. "Do you remember what you said?" Emma thought for a moment. "I said I just wanted to make a difference, even if it was a small one. And look what you've accomplished. Your company has helped 17 businesses reduce their carbon footprint by an average of 40%. You've created jobs, influenced policy, and inspired a new generation of environmental leaders. You've changed the world, Emma, just like I knew you would." Emma felt tears prick her eyes at the pride in his voice. "Alexander, where is this coming from?" Instead of answering directly, Alexander reached into his coat pocket, his hand trembling slightly. "Emma, these past 2 years have been the most extraordinary of my life. You walked into my office in tears, and you completely transformed everything I thought I knew about love, about happiness, about what the future could hold." Emma's breath caught as Alexander dropped to one knee in the snow, pulling out a small velvet box that he opened to reveal a stunning vintage ring, a round diamond surrounded by smaller stones that sparkled like stars in the lamplight. "This was my grandmother's ring," Alexander said, his voice rough with emotion. "She and my grandfather were married for 57 years, and she always said the secret was finding someone who made you want to be the best version of yourself. Emma, you do that for me every single day." Emma's hands flew to her mouth as tears streamed down her face. Around them, other park visitors had begun to notice the proposal, some stopping to watch with delighted smiles. "Emma Catherine Hayes," Alexander continued, his grey eyes never leaving her face, "you are brilliant, compassionate, funny, stubborn, and absolutely beautiful. You challenge me, inspire me, and love me in ways I never thought possible. You chose to build a life with me when you could have chosen anything else in the world, and I promise to spend every day proving I'm worthy of that choice." He paused, taking a shaky breath before asking the question that would change everything. "Will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my partner, my best friend for the rest of our lives?" Emma was crying too hard to speak immediately, but her radiant smile gave Alexander his answer before she found her voice. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, Alexander, yes, of course, yes." Alexander's hands shook as he slipped the ring onto her finger, and then he was standing, pulling her into his arms and spinning her around as she laughed through her tears. When he set her down, they were both crying and laughing simultaneously. "I love you so much," Emma said against his lips as he kissed her deeply, not caring about their audience of delighted strangers who had begun to applaud. "I love you too," Alexander murmured against her hair. "Forever, Emma. I want forever with you." As they walked home through the snowy park, Emma's left hand tucked securely in Alexander's right. She kept glancing down at the ring that caught the light from every street lamp they passed. "How long have you been planning this?" she asked, still slightly breathless from the surprise. "Months," Alexander admitted. "I bought the ring the week after you decided to stay in New York. I knew then that I wanted to spend my life with you, but I wanted to wait until you were settled with your business, until we were sure about what we were building together." "And are you sure?" Emma asked teasingly. Alexander stopped walking again, cupping her face in his hands. "Emma, I have never been more certain of anything in my life. You are my future, my home, my everything. I can't wait to call you my wife." That evening, they called their families to share the news. Emma's parents were overjoyed. Her mother had completely come around about Alexander over the past year, and her father had developed a genuine fondness for his daughter's successful, clearly devoted boyfriend. "I always knew he was the one," Patricia said over FaceTime, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "The way he looks at you, Emma, Like you hung the stars just for him. Alexander's sister, Rebecca, flew in from California the next week to meet Emma properly and help plan what she declared would be the wedding of the century. "I've never seen my brother this happy," Rebecca told Emma over lunch while Alexander was at work. "After Catherine died, I honestly thought he'd never allow himself to love anyone again. You brought him back to life, Emma." The engagement ring felt strange on Emma's finger for the first few days. She kept catching sight of it and feeling a flutter of disbelief that this extraordinary man had chosen her, that they were actually going to spend their lives together. But the strangeness quickly gave way to deep contentment. At work, her team congratulated her enthusiastically, and her clients sent flowers and champagne. At Sterling and Associates, the announcement was met with genuine warmth from colleagues who had watched their relationship develop from its dramatic beginning. "Finally," Linda Chen said when she heard the news, "I was beginning to think you two would never get around to making it official." 3 weeks after the proposal, Emma and Alexander were having dinner at his apartment when she brought up something that had been on her mind. "Alexander, I want to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." Alexander looked up from his pasta, immediately alert to the serious tone in her voice. "Of course. What is it? Do you ever think about Catherine? When you look at this ring, when you think about our wedding, do you feel like you're betraying her memory?" Alexander set down his fork, considering the question carefully. It was something he had wondered about himself, particularly in the weeks leading up to the proposal. "I think about her sometimes," he said honestly. "But Emma, when I think about Catherine now, I don't feel guilt or betrayal. I feel gratitude to her for teaching me how to love completely, and to you for teaching me how to love again. She would have wanted me to be happy, to find someone who challenges and supports me the way you do." Emma reached across the table to take his hand. "I hope I get to meet her someday, in whatever way that's possible. I want to thank her for helping to make you the man I fell in love with." Alexander brought her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her engagement ring. "She would have adored you. You're exactly the kind of strong, independent, brilliant woman she always said I needed." As they planned their wedding for the following spring, both Emma and Alexander felt the presence of everyone who had shaped their journey to each other. Catherine, whose love had taught Alexander about commitment; Emma's parents, whose support had given her the confidence to pursue her dreams; and all the challenges that had tested their relationship and proven its strength. The proposal had been perfect, but it was just the beginning. Now came the joy of planning a future together, of legally and publicly declaring their commitment to building something extraordinary as partners in every sense of the word. Emma Catherine Hayes was going to become Emma Catherine Sterling, and she could hardly wait. The Sterling and Associates rooftop had been transformed into a garden paradise for Emma and Alexander's wedding. White roses, peonies, and jasmine created fragrant archways throughout the space, while string lights twinkled overhead like stars. The ceremony would take place at sunset, with the Manhattan skyline as their backdrop, a perfect setting for the couple who had found love in the heart of the corporate world. Emma stood in the bridal suite, a converted conference room on the 26th floor, looking at herself in the full-length mirror. Her wedding dress was elegant and timeless, ivory silk with delicate lace sleeves and a flowing train that her mother was carefully arranging. The vintage necklace Alexander had given her so many months ago rested at her throat, and her grandmother's pearl earrings completed the look. "You look absolutely radiant," Patricia said, stepping back to admire her daughter. "I can't believe my little girl is getting married." "I can't believe I'm marrying Alexander Sterling," Emma laughed, touching the delicate silver necklace. "Sometimes I still feel like I'm dreaming." "It's not a dream, sweetheart. It's the life you chose and the love you fought for." A knock on the door interrupted them, and Linda Chen entered carrying a small wrapped box. "From the groom," she said with a knowing smile. "He wanted you to have this before the ceremony." Inside the box was a delicate bracelet with a small charm shaped like a leaf, a callback to their shared passion for environmental causes, along with a note in Alexander's familiar handwriting. "For my brilliant wife-to-be, thank you for choosing us. I love you beyond words. Baby." 20 floors above, Alexander was having his own moment of reflection in his office, now serving as the groom's preparation room. His best man, his college friend Michael, was helping him adjust his bow tie while trying to calm his obvious nerves. "You're sure about this?" Michael teased, noting Alexander's shaking hands. "I've never been more sure of anything," Alexander replied, his voice steady despite his nervousness. "I just can't believe she said yes." "Believe it. That woman is completely in love with you, and after seeing you two together, I understand why. You're better with her, Alex. Happier, more relaxed, more like the guy I knew in college before life got so serious." Alexander looked out his office window toward the rooftop where guests were gathering. He could see Emma's parents talking with his sister Rebecca, Linda Chen coordinating with the catering staff, and dozens of colleagues and friends who had watched their relationship develop from its dramatic beginning. As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the city, the ceremony began. Alexander took his place at the altar, his hands clasped behind his back to hide their trembling as he watched the doors for his first glimpse of his bride. The string quartet began playing Canon in D, and the wedding party started down the aisle. Linda Chen as Emma's matron of honor, followed by Rebecca as Alexander's sister and Emma's new friend. Michael took his place beside Alexander, grinning at his friend's obvious emotional state. Then the music shifted to the wedding march, and Alexander's breath caught in his throat. Emma appeared in the doorway, radiant in ivory silk and lace, her arm linked through her father's. But Alexander only had eyes for her face, glowing with joy and love, her green eyes sparkling with unshed tears of happiness. The silver necklace at her throat caught the light, and her smile was brighter than all the string lights overhead. As she walked down the aisle, Emma's eyes never left Alexander's face. He looked devastatingly handsome in his black tuxedo, but it was the expression of pure love and wonder in his grey eyes that made her heart race. This was the man who had seen her potential when she couldn't see it herself, who had fought for their love when obstacles seemed insurmountable, who had chosen to build a life with her when he could have chosen solitude. When Emma reached the altar, her father placed her hand in Alexander's with a warm smile. "Take care of her," he said quietly. "Always," Alexander promised, his voice rough with emotion. The officiant began the ceremony, but Emma and Alexander were lost in each other, barely hearing the words as they gazed into each other's eyes. When it came time for their personal vows, Alexander went first, his voice strong and clear despite his obvious emotion. "Emma, 2 years ago, you burst into my life in the most unexpected way, crying, determined, and absolutely magnificent. You turned my carefully controlled world upside down, and I thank God every day that you did. You taught me that love doesn't have to be a loss, that opening your heart again isn't betraying the past. It's honoring it by choosing to live fully in the present." Emma's tears were flowing freely now, but her smile never wavered. "You are my partner in every sense, in business, in dreams, in the small moments that make up a life together. You challenge me to be better, support me when I falter, and love me in ways I never thought possible. I promise to encourage your ambitions, celebrate your successes, and stand by you through whatever challenges life brings. I promise to love you completely, faithfully, and joyfully for all the days of my life." When Emma spoke her vows, her voice was clear and strong despite her tears. "Alexander, you saw me when I couldn't see myself. You believed in me when I had lost faith in my own abilities. You showed me that love doesn't make you weak. It makes you brave enough to reach for things you never thought possible. You are my safe harbor and my greatest adventure, my dearest friend, and my passionate love." She paused, looking directly into his eyes as she continued. "I promise to build dreams with you, to support your vision while pursuing my own, to laugh with you in joy and comfort you in sorrow. I promise to choose us every day, just as I chose us that night in the garden when I could have chosen the safe path instead. I love you beyond reason, beyond measure, beyond time itself." When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Alexander cupped Emma's face in his hands and kissed her with all the love and promise of their shared future. The rooftop erupted in cheers and applause, but Emma and Alexander were lost in their own world, finally and officially bound together forever. The reception that followed was magical. They danced their first dance to the same song that had played during that first dance at the company event so long ago, when their relationship had been nothing but stolen glances and unspoken attraction. Now they moved together with the easy intimacy of two people completely comfortable in each other's arms. "Mrs. Sterling," Alexander murmured against her ear as they swayed together, "how does it feel to be married?" "Perfect," Emma replied, looking up at him with shining eyes. "Absolutely perfect." As the evening progressed, Emma found herself pulled aside by Patricia, who pressed a small wrapped gift into her hands. "Something for later," her mother said with tears in her eyes. "I'm so proud of you, Emma. You found exactly what you were meant to find." Later that night in Alexander's apartment, now their apartment, Emma opened her mother's gift to find a vintage photo frame containing a picture of her grandparents on their wedding day, along with a note, "For Emma and Alexander, may your love story be as beautiful and enduring as theirs was. All my love, Mum." "She's right, you know," Alexander said, looking over Emma's shoulder at the photograph as she settled beside him on their bed, both still in their wedding attire but barefoot and relaxed. "Our love story is beautiful." Emma turned in his arms, studying his face in the soft lamplight. "And it's just beginning. We have forever now, Alexander. Forever to build dreams and face challenges and love each other through everything life brings." Alexander's response was to kiss his wife deeply, pouring all his love and gratitude and excitement for their future into the connection between them. When they broke apart, both breathing heavily, he rested his forehead against hers. "Forever starts now," he whispered. "Forever starts now," Emma agreed. 1 year later, Emma sat in that same apartment, in the same spot where they had shared their first married kiss, holding a small gift box with trembling hands. Alexander was working late, and she had spent the entire day rehearsing how to share her news. When Alexander finally came home, he found Emma waiting for him with an expression of barely contained excitement. "You look like you're about to burst," he said, loosening his tie and moving to kiss her hello. "What's going on?" "I have something for you," Emma said, holding out the box with shaking hands. Alexander opened it to find a positive pregnancy test, along with a tiny Sterling & Associates business card that read, "Future CEO," and a note, "Our family starts now. I love you, Emma." Alexander stared at the test for a long moment, before looking up at his wife with wonder and joy radiating from every feature. "Emma, are you serious?" "Completely serious," Emma laughed through happy tears. "We're going to have a baby, Alexander. Our love is creating new life." Alexander swept her into his arms, spinning her around their living room, just as he had when she'd accepted his proposal, both of them laughing and crying with pure joy. "I love you so much," Alexander said, setting her down and placing his hands gently on her still flat stomach. "Both of you." As they stood together in the golden light of their shared home, Emma and Alexander marveled at the journey that had brought them to this moment. From that first tear-filled encounter in his office to building a business empire together, from navigating corporate politics to choosing love over fear, from a rooftop wedding to the promise of new life, their story had been everything they dared to dream and more. Emma Catherine Sterling touched the silver necklace at her throat, the same one Alexander had given her when she was still just a junior marketing associate with big dreams. Now she was a successful CEO, a beloved wife, and soon to be a mother. The scared, crying girl who had burst into Alexander's office seeking help had grown into a woman who had claimed every dream she'd ever dared to reach for. "Thank you," she whispered against Alexander's lips as he kissed her again. "For what? For seeing me when I couldn't see myself, for loving me when I didn't think I deserved it, for building this beautiful life with me." Alexander's smile was radiant as he pulled his wife and future child closer. "Thank you for letting me love you, for choosing us, for making every single day an adventure worth waking up for." In the window of their apartment, the city lights twinkled like stars, bearing witness to a love story that had begun with tears and transformed into something absolutely extraordinary. Emma and Alexander Sterling had found their forever, and it was everything they had ever dreamed it could be. Leave your comment and share this story with someone special. It truly helps us keep bringing new stories to you. And if you want to follow every chapter of this emotional journey, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. Your support makes all the difference.